Welcome everybody. Those that kind of joined in at the end, we're just chatting about private banking and lending and things like that. And that is very much how we do things at Volition, where you'll find pretty casual. This won't be a very formal presentation tonight. Of course, there'll be information that we'll share with everybody, but we do try to keep it informal. If you have any questions, you drop them in the group chat. Shelby helps moderate, and we can make sure that those are answered. So welcome. Tonight is brought to you by Volition Properties. So if you don't know about us, let's flip through a couple slides, and I can let you know what tonight is all about. So we, have a bit of networking at the beginning of every event. We do these monthly. Usually it's the third Wednesday of every month. And I think next month we're actually having an in-person meeting. So if you're able to come out and you're based in Toronto, we highly encourage it. I always say your network is your net worth. And I have like real examples of where my network has saved me massive dollars. People who have been to many Volition events have heard me talk about it before. But at any point in your investing journey, you can only learn so much online through forums, YouTube videos, whatever happens to be. At some point, you need to have real human connection with somebody and know people with the experience to help you through the problems that you will face as you become a more sophisticated investor. 7, we'll flip over the presentations, and after that, we'll take Q&A. But as I mentioned, if you've got any questions throughout, just let us know. We'll try to field them. So who the hell are we? So we are now the largest and most active real estate investing meetup in Toronto. We've got over 3,000 members. So congratulations to the team, and I think especially Shelby for all her hard work on the marketing that happens behind the scenes. So yeah, we're the biggest Toronto investment group now.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. We've got a poll.
And I kick things off with a poll.
Yeah, so just a quick poll for those who are online right now. We're just curious, like how many people is this their first time they've heard of us, or they've heard me talk ad nauseum. We've been doing these meetups for 4 or 5 years now. So if you can complete the poll, we'll keep going then. I'm going to put in mine. I've been here a lot.
Wow, this is funny. Good job, Shelby. This is a complete surprise even to us. So no, this is awesome. Thanks. Well, this helps us. So this helps us. My name is Matt, and I help run Volition. So this helps us figure out who's with us tonight, because we can't see all of your friendly faces. Some of you, the brave ones, do turn on your video, but we don't really know who everyone is. So this gives us a better understanding. There we go, 70%. Wow. First time. Okay, now we know how
that actually really helps, because I'll explain a little bit more about us, because a lot of times people, frankly, are like, what the heck are you guys? So let's flip over the next slide, Shelby, and I'll dive into that then.
Hold on, I'm just taking a screenshot of this poll first.
I got one.
Yeah,
you got one. Okay.
One thing we are not. Oh, okay. So sorry. Before we get into about what Volition is, we're back in HGTV. We've got another article with them. This one. Which one is this one that we have?
This is 15 things you need to know before you buy your first rental property.
And to be quite honest, like, when HGTV approaches us to write these kind of articles, they ask us to explain real estate investing in 100 words or less. And like, obviously you can't do that. So this article is really just about ideas, things that you should be considering. And it's not the cookie cutter stuff. One of the things we really pride ourselves in is deeper thought and more analytical approaches to real estate investing. So please go take a look at it. We are up online at HGTV. I think if you just search HGTV and Volition, you'll find the article.
Or Shelby can drop the link in the chat. Yeah, but anyway, yes. Ming's preface.
Already did, Matt. She's ahead of the curve tonight.
Okay. Thanks, Shelby. She keeps us our well-oiled machine running. Yeah. So Ming's already prefaced this, but this there's a lot of fluff in here. I'm not gonna lie. You wrote this thing. Doug Murray's name is on there, but all he did was take our content and make sure it was less than 100 words. And we had to write it very fluffy for the HGTV audience. So don't judge us by this content, okay?
I think it's a good place to get started to get ideas. But all you're going to get after reading this, quite honestly, is more questions.
More questions, yes.
Right. But that's good, right? Like if you are new to real estate investing, this is a great place to start.
Yeah.
So next slide, please. So who are we? Basically, our mission statement is to help people navigate the complex world of real estate investing. When I started investing in 2001, like I know there's probably people on this call who are born then, but probably, right? I started investing back then, and there were no good resources. There was no Volition. I actually wish this company existed when I was doing real estate investing, because I needed somebody who just would help guide me through, handhold me step by step through the process. And that's what we do. We guide people from beginning to end, how to get through and invest in real estate, how to do it in the second most expensive market in Canada, Toronto. We make that work. And then we are very heavy on research as well. We're not about headlines. The thing you'll always hear me talk about is digging deeper than the headlines, digging deeper than the data as it presents itself, and actually getting into what that data means. And then we take the data and we actually come up with solutions based on the data. So, like I said, we pride ourselves really on being a little more analytical, than kind of real estate investing in general. Next slide, please. So, here's a bunch of stuff. We own 32 million in personal holdings. That's the folks here at Volition, the primary partners. We've won a bunch of awards. We've been on, magazines, stuff like that. We've done podcasts. Our friends tonight, from the Rise Network, Austin and Mayu, I spoke on their podcast as well. This is not to impress you, just to impress upon you that we have experience. We're not coming. We are coming at this first and primarily as real estate investors ourselves, and secondly as educators about real estate. Next slide, please.
And these numbers are out of date. As you can see, 2,800 investors. We just hit 3,000. So
yeah.
So all of these numbers would be higher.
That's a great question. Are these holdings via JV or personal? They're actually all personal.
Personal.
That's another thing that we do. I know tonight we're going to talk about JVs, but funnily enough, we personally, there's good and bad. And I know one of the things I asked Austin and Mike to talk about is traditionally our audience loves to hear the bad. Right? Everybody that comes here, they're quite intelligent folks. They don't need to be sold, but they need to understand the good and the risk, and then how do we actually mitigate that risk? And there's a lot of risk and difficulty around JVs. We have lots of experience with them, but we don't actually hold JVs anymore. I don't think you don't have any anymore, Matt, and I don't think Sam does either. We're completely out of JVs now.
We use them as a tool, and we've used them as a tool to grow our portfolio to where we need it to be. And then when we don't need the partners anymore, then we can, divest the partners out as well. So that's the point that we're at. And in fact, before we started, I was actually just talking about how I'm starting to divest my entire portfolio, because that's the point that I personally am at as well. So anyway, are we good on this slide? Can we go?
Yeah, next slide, please.
Okay.
So what do we actually do? We have 4 areas of the business. The first thing is advisory, and that is what you're seeing tonight. Is these presentations. We teach people about real estate investing. We keep them up to date with what's happening with the market. The next thing that falls under advisory is one-on-one consultations. So when somebody is, they say, hey, Ming, I want to own 20 doors. How do I do it? We actually sit down and build out a plan. We look at what you're doing, where you are in the beginning, where you're trying to get to, and we work on strategies on how to get there. And then throughout the journey, as you become a real estate investor, advisory remains with you. So it's not like a kind of a one and done thing. If you have questions, kind of what your next steps are, we get together again, we map out your plans, and we continue executing. Next part is realty. And that's actually buying the properties that you can invest in. We're all realtors, and finding a property that makes sense to invest in Toronto is no small matter. I just had a conversation today with somebody, and he's actually looking for personal residence, but is interested in having a basement suite. And when I heard that, I was like, whoa, that's a big deal, because I need to know side setbacks, ceiling requirements, methods of egress, fire separation, interconnected fire alarms. Like, I need to know all these kind of things, which are technical in nature, beyond just making sure that we've got an entrance to the basement, especially if we want to do it legally. And no good business is built on illegal properties. You want to do everything above board. So that's what we specialize in. We specialize in investment properties. We do very well on personal residence as well, because we have that skill set. But that's what the realty part of the company is. Next thing is renovations. Because oftentimes, once you buy an investment property, you need to execute on, duplexing, triplexing, creating a laneway suite, like all these kind of things. We do that. We provide the strategy that allows you to execute on successful renovations. And that's really key, right? If you go and you just try to build a triplex, for example, you'll get hit with what, 120,000 in development charges. We have strategies that we use to work around things like development charges, ensure that your plumbing for your laneway suite is laid out properly and you're serviced before you go and build it. So that's really our expertise, and we manage those projects. And then the very last thing is leasing property management. Once your beautiful triplex is done, you need it leased up. We also take care of that.
Yeah. Cool. So our apologies if this is repetitive for people who have been here before, but given the fact that we had like 70% new folks, hopefully it's okay that we spend a couple of minutes just talking about who Volition is. So thanks for the thumbs up, Jack.
So these are the folks. This is the Volition team. I won't walk through everybody here, but if we go to the next slide,
there's lots of friendly faces here. You can see Chris got a thumbs up, Flo friendly face there. Shelby has gone video.
We're the only unfriendly faces here.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, this is your Volition team.
Next slide. Oh yeah, there we go.
This is great.
And this could be you. We are hiring.
This could be you.
So if you or anybody who's an avid real estate investor and also is an agent or almost an agent, let us know, because we are growing quite rapidly. We've been very fortunate. Our team has gone from like 2 people to 9, 10, I can't count it, in a relatively short period of time. And we're looking to continue to grow. So if you have any interest in being part of the, I pat myself on the back and say that Toronto's top real estate investment firm, let us know.
No, this is awesome. Thanks, Shelby. I got a good laugh out of this one. Yes. So if you are already an investor and looking to be an agent, come talk to us. If you're an agent and you want to work more as an investor agent, come talk to us. If you're neither, then you need to convince us.
What did our top agent earn last year?
Oh, I don't want to
300? 250?
Well, you're letting the cat out of the bag. It's a.
You can earn. Yeah, you can do quite well.
Let's just say you make a comfortable living. Yeah. You can make a comfortable living working with Volition. Let's just put it in those terms. Okay.
Cool. And kind of hand in hand with our visions, our mission statement. This is really like our vision picture, right? Our mission picture. We try to be the eraser that breaks through the problems, right? Because it is a maze, it is complicated, and if you're investing in Toronto, it's bloody difficult to be frank. And you need somebody, and you need a network of people to get through and execute successfully. So we really try to be this.
Yeah. Keep in mind, we are one of the only, if not the only, real estate investor focused team in Toronto with a business model that works, with the advisory service, with all the services packaged together in a solution for you. So this is who we are. And then this.
And yeah, this is just a reminder to any of our clients. I know we've got a whole bunch of new clients that have joined. If we have missed anybody, please let us know. Please let Shelby know. We have a private mastermind chat group for all our clients. This is that power of that network. We talk about everything. It's a safe space to talk about, being a landlord, talk about, rat problems, whatever it is that you happen to have.
Today was bed bugs.
Problems.
Today was bed bugs.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a great resource. And yeah, if we missed any of our clients, please let us know.
So before you message us, just to be clear, this is only for clients who have worked with us, either on the realty side or on the advisory side or the construction side. That's it. Okay, so it's an exclusive group. Please don't message us. We get this every month now because I don't think we're clear. This is not a public group. You can't just join. It's only for clients. So, cool. But if we missed you, then message us.
Yes, if you're a client, you should already know. Okay, let's go into what's happening in the market. So if you've, I follow the news a lot. And if you've been following the news as well, you may have seen some really clickbaity headlines about massive decreases in sales volume. And yes, it is correct. We've come down massively from an absolutely crazy March that happened earlier this year. But the thing that's actually important about this is look at how 2021 compares year over year to like previous years. Drop 2020 because that's when the COVID bomb hit. But look at 2019 and 2018, and you see we're still consistently above those previous years. So we still have a very busy market. And seasonality, folks, like spring is the busiest time of year, summer's slow, and fall will pick up again. So be really careful when you see those headlines saying like, oh, sales volumes are down, market's gonna crash. No, it's summer, people are on vacation. This is quite typical of what we see. And it's actually more stronger than what we've seen in previous years. Next slide, please. The other clickbaity headline that we're seeing a lot of right now is that, oh, home sale prices are stagnant. And this is the stat that they'll pull up. They'll pull up the average resale home price. And you'll see it hasn't changed very much. But if you've been in the market, if you've been active anywhere in the market, you'll know that it has been just crazy. Like prices have been jumping up at a very high rate. So how can this be? How can we have average resale home price that's stagnant, yet actually, boots in the ground, prices are going up? Well, one of the things we'll dive into is we actually look at a much more detailed level what's happening within the market. So we look at condos and we look at like-for-like sales. So, we'll look at 2-bedroom condos and we'll track the performance of a 2-bedroom condo in a particular neighborhood month over month, see how that data is doing. And then we'll do the same for like a 3-bedroom detached home. Because only when we're looking at that level of granularity are we able to actually tell what's happening with the market. So while this data is technically correct, what's actually happening is we're having a large volume of sales in the low end of the market. Condos are on fire. The condo market's totally recovered and has in a very short period of time recovered. And because there's more transactions happening at the lower end of the market, the average transaction price is lower, right? That has brought the average transaction price down, but it doesn't mean that the homes are any cheaper. It just means a lot of condos are being sold right now. So again, beware of headlines, look at the data that's sitting behind them. Next slide, please. New listings. So I like to look at this because this is a bit of an indicator of where the market is headed. If we're looking for forward, future looking indices, this is one of the ones for us to care about. This is our supply side, right? New listings, and our demand side is very difficult to measure. So we look at our supply side and we see supply is pretty consistent kind of year over year for June. So we're good there, but let's go to the next slide. So this is sales to listing ratio. And basically the higher the sales to listing ratio is, the more the market is accepting of the product that's out there. When you see a low sales to listing ratio, basically people are asking too much for properties and people aren't willing to buy those properties. But when you start to see it above, let's say I'd say the 50 to 55% point, then that's about average for Toronto. It means that the prices people are asking for in general, people are buying them because this is a sale that happens within 30 days of something being posted. So see, it's still quite high. People are asking for more for their properties these days, and people are simply paying more for these properties. Next slide, please. So this is our market data. We take the publicly available data, we drill down a lot further, we break it up neighborhood by neighborhood, and we analyze it, for our folks every month. So next slide. Did it go? Oh, hello? Oh, there we go.
Sorry, was I on mute?
Yeah, you're on mute. I was like,
sorry guys.
So these are the areas that we break the data down. These are the TREB neighborhoods. So you might be familiar with this, like CO1 is kind of like downtown West Side. EO1 would be like East York, for example. EO3 is north of Danforth and East York. So this is how the data is available to us. So let's go to the next slide. And here we have downtown single-family detached homes. So this is a 3-bedroom, I believe this is a 3-bedroom detached home that we track the price of month over month. This is using the home price index. This is not our own indice. This is a Terranet indice. And you can see, even through the downturns that happened kind of through 2017, the downtown market for single-family homes has been on a tear. It hasn't stopped. And even though the the average home sale price has stayed the same, the value of these properties has continued to go up. So what the home price index folks do is they actually follow the same type of property and then follow it through the monthly cycles to see how much it's selling for. And you'll see there's been a big spike over the last couple of months. And if you've been investing or shopping personally, you've felt this. Next slide, please.
Actually, I was just going to say, so Kirthanan had a question: where can you get the data to build these reports into specific regions and housing sites? So the funny thing is, this is the stuff you're asking for. It's people generally aren't looking at the right things. So it's important that what Ming said, this is the house price index, and this will give you better data than average sale price. And as Ming's going to show you, we do it across different housing types in different areas.
Yeah, and one of the things, like, you can just Google actually home price index and you can find this information. All we're doing is we're taking the information and we're mapping it out and we're keeping archives so that way we can see trends of it. I'm not too sure how far you can go back. I think it's only about a year that's available online. We've been keeping this since early 2017. So we have some more of this data so we can see trends. But yeah, it is publicly accessible information.
We're just synthesizing into something meaningful for you, right?
Yeah. So here's downtown condos. I'm sure everybody heard that condo prices were sinking through 2020, through the pandemic. Absolutely, they were. But that is a long forgotten thing, because in the span of about 3 to 4 months, prices have almost fully recovered. And as Chris will dive into during his boots on the ground segment, we're seeing pricing and rents drastically increase now in the downtown core. And this is in sharp contrast to some of the headlines about an exodus happening from Toronto. It's simply not true. The data does not show that there's a drops in pricing, drops in rents. These things are all trending up. And right now, people are trying to get into rental properties ahead of anticipated return to work, ahead of an anticipated return to the downtown core. Next slide, please. And let's look at everywhere else, because we do this. Now, everywhere else, I'll say the GTA. I know there's a lot of people who invest outside the GTA on the call today, but the rest of the city. I know the world revolves around Toronto, but so this is not just the rest. This is just not the downtown core, because if you follow Volition, we have a lot of reasons that we invest in just the downtown core as opposed to some of the other neighborhoods. Our business model is predicated around specific tenant types, distances to public transit, socioeconomic ability of tenant profiles. Like, we're very laser focused, and it means that we don't invest in some other neighborhoods. These are other neighborhoods. It's not that it's bad, right? And what you'll find out tonight when we talk with Mayu and when we talk with Austin, there is no perfect place to invest. It is really about being an expert in where you invest. We happen to choose Toronto because we feel like we're experts here. We live here, right? We know the difference between High Park and Regent Park, right? We know that they're different, right? And if you don't have that level of expertise, don't invest wherever it happens to be. If you don't know the difference in Toronto between those places, don't invest in Toronto. So these are some of the other neighborhoods. You'll see that we have had a big recovery in pricing over the last 6 months in 2021. Single family homes in the outskirts have also ticked up. That huge increase you're seeing in C14, a lot of it has to do with redevelopment that's been happening in that area. So if you're familiar with the Willowdale East neighborhood, there's a lot of 3-bedroom bungalows that got torn down, and then a $3 million, $4 million home gets put up. It skews the numbers, but that is what we're seeing here. That's part of the big price jump. Rental boots on ground. So Chris is our leasing expert. He specializes in East York as well as leasing, and he's going to talk about what we're actually seeing happening right now with our rental properties in Toronto.
All right, thanks so much, Ming, for that introduction. I hope everyone's enjoying the meetup so far. It's informative, and yeah, hopefully I can enlighten some of you with some of the current information that's happening with leases in the core areas that we focus on in Volition. So as you can see on the screen here, I just took a sample set of some recent leases that I've done with our clients here at Volition. And just to highlight a few of the key numbers, you can see that the average time to fill the lease, just about 4 weeks. And in terms of just price pre-COVID versus current lease prices we're seeing, it's about 91%, so about 10% down. But as Ming mentioned, things anecdotally have started to pick up. Just personally, I've seen for 1-bedroom condos in downtown area pick up about $50 to $100 in the last couple months alone. And a lot more showings, a lot more people interested in units in good locations. Just another highlight here, the number of applicants. So we have average 11. So this is just in terms of how serious they are. So they've actually gone through a pre-screening questionnaire that we've developed at Volition to just try to pre-screen some of the candidates to ensure that they're serious. So people who actually spent like 5-10 minutes actually completing the questionnaire, for us, that's a pretty serious candidate. So that's the average of 11, as you can see. And in terms of overall types, we have some rental, furnished rentals. We have some multifamily, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. We got some basement units here and then a couple condos as well. And a lot of the different mediums that we use, you can see rentals.ca, Facebook Marketplace is a really popular one. It's free. Kijiji, MLS. So generally I find with like some of the more expensive units over 2,500, MLS is a bit more, in terms of quality of candidate applying, it's definitely the more preferred method to go in terms of leasing up your more expensive units. And again, just to give you a bit more information about the tenant profiles, you can sort of see here, again, our general demographic is young professionals, mid to late 20s, early 30s, good income, good credit as well. So you can see here that that's pretty consistent. We got some medical residents, IT professionals, computer engineers, med students. But yeah, in terms of overall, the market has definitely started to pick up. And I just wanted to highlight a couple recent client lease ups that happened in July in the East End and the West End on the next slides. Next slide, please.
Actually, I just want to interject. Chris, this is like, this looks amazing. And there's a lot, like, just in case you're new to Volition, like this is vindication of the Volition business model. Take a look at the tenant profile in the areas that we talk about. So Chris is going through and actually leasing up to the exact tenant profile that we always talk about. So don't gloss over that point. Make sure you take note of that. So thanks, Chris. That was great.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add too is like you actually can't get this data like
Anywhere.
Can't get it anywhere. Like because like if you go and you look for this kind of data that's publicly available on, I don't know, rentals.ca or some of these, they're fantastic websites, but they're institutional. So they're looking at, the 400 unit apartment building. What are they renting for? Who are they renting to? And it's good data, but it doesn't help people like us who are, frankly, mom and pop investors. Right? We are not buying 400 unit buildings. So that data is interesting, but this is the kind of data we actually need to know how our rentals are performing, who the tenant profiles are that are picking them up, how long is it taking to lease, things like that.
Yeah. There's lots of good stuff in here. I'd recommend you taking a screenshot of this and studying it further if I were someone on this call. So yes, thank you.
Keep going,
Awesome.
Chris.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for that. So just again, some anecdotal evidence from some of our actual clients who've had some leases come up in terms of July, because I know that was earlier May, June. Things were still not quite open. Now things are, we're in stage 3, so we definitely have a lot more activity. So I just again try to preface that these are just a couple examples of some of our current Volition clients that had leases up and leased up, given actually quite good rents. So I'm not trying to say that things are gangbusters and are going, straight to pre-COVID levels in the next few months. I'm not saying that, but I just want to show you a couple data points from the East End and the West End that, could indicate that there are some recovery in the multifamily space. So on the screen here, we have one of our clients who actually leased up his 2-bed, 1-bath unit on the upper floor. So pre-COVID, or actually just when COVID was happening, you can see April 2020, he got just under 2,500 utilities included. The tenants gave notice in May of this year, given the rent kind of being low and they just wanted to explore greener pastures. He actually held out a bit and marketed his units very well in terms of just a beautiful, as you can see, this is the actual unit itself. So he invested in, staged photography that we can assist you with to get a professional photographer to get your unit staged and professional photography pictures taken. But you can see here that he was able to lease up his unit 2,500 and the utilities are basically being paid by the tenant, which is spectacular. So just assuming $150 for utilities, the net increase pre-COVID to now is about 8.38%, which is pretty impressive. Obviously I'm going to give him some kudos for his marketing, but again, just one data point I wanted to point out to the Gerrard and Coxwell East End area. Next slide, please. So another data point for the West End folks, DuPont and Emerson, we have a 3-bed, 2-bath main over basement unit, about 1,400 square feet, leased out for about 2,700 June of 2019. And just this past month, our client was able to lease it out for 2,853. So a net increase of about 5.5%. So again, just not saying that things are just, amazing and every area is doing well. Like I just wanted to point out a couple data points for the people on the call here that we do see some signs that are great for landlords, that prices are coming back, especially in the core areas that we focus in. And as you can see, all our pictures are the actual units, and we really try to cater to the higher end young professionals that want something like nice, clean, easy to just move into, no hassles, everything's bright and cheerful. So that's what we really focus on at Volition. Next slide, please. And yeah, just some indications about the future. So again, we don't have a crystal ball, but just from some anecdotal evidence from when I'm screening some tenants, a lot of them are basically saying, look, I want to come back to some of these core areas because I'm being asked by my employer to come back to the office maybe a couple of days a week. I want to come back, things are opening up. enjoy the area amenities, maybe lock in a discounted price pre-COVID. So a lot of those factors are, I would say, factoring into more of an uptick in rents for the foreseeable future. And again, I just want to preface that things vary across different areas. So you might be having, different evidence or different experiences, but again, I just wanted to share with you some of the data that we have collected. And again, we're hoping that this is kind of leading to greater increases in rent prices for the landlords and our clients. So yeah, I just really wanted to share just some of the information that I'm seeing on the ground here.
That was super useful. There are a whole bunch of the questions that came in. I want to be respectful of the time, make sure that our speakers tonight get a chance to speak. I'll touch on one of them because I think one of them is very important, and that is, how do you get these tenant profiles? One of the things we strongly believe in as investors, and I think that more sophisticated investors take this approach, you start with the end in mind, right? If you want a student as a tenant, you buy a property that a student wants to live in an area that a student wants to rent. If you want a young professional earning $65,000 to $75,000 with a university degree, who maximum commute time is 27 minutes, you buy a house or you buy a property that person wants to live in, right? We spent a lot of time in research on neighborhoods that particular tenant profile wants to rent, because that's our niche, right? But if it's a student rental property, for example, I come from originally starting in student rentals, commute time, walking distance to university, having separate bathrooms in each of the units, very important. You have to understand what your target demographic, what your target market is looking for first, and then you buy the property that they want. So then screening becomes pretty easy because you're already attracting the right tenant profiles, or the tenant profiles you're trying to target, I should say.
Great point, Ming. So this is a new feature for our meetup. We've never done this before. We would love your feedback. If you found this useful and it's something you want us to continue doing, drop some comments to us in the chat. Let us know that this is useful to you. We do this for you, right? We already know, like we do this day in, day out. We're trying to help you. So if this is something that's of value to you, let us know. If it misses the mark, also let us know, and let us know how we can improve. This is new, so we're still ironing out some kinks, but I do think, personally, I think Chris hit the mark. So awesome job, Chris. Questions are starting to come in. So Shelby, I think, feel free to drop your questions in there. We're going to try to answer them as we go along in the chat. If we don't get to it in the chat, then I think Shelby's going to keep a running list of questions that we're going to address at the end. Cool. Any other housekeeping items, Shelby? Now that we're 39 minutes in.
No, let's
just carry on.
Okay, good stuff. I don't know if we missed anything. Okay,
cool. Let's flip ahead. So the main event tonight. Next slide, please. So I wanted to, very warm Volition welcome to our speakers tonight, Austin and Mayu. They are the co-founders of the Rise Network, a fantastically successful network of real estate investors. They invest throughout Southern Ontario, and they've done, both of them, very well for themselves. When I asked them how they wanted to be introduced, they're into so much stuff that they couldn't come up with a succinct way of introducing themselves. So they said, call us real estate entrepreneurs. And I think that's amazing, because I think when you're really into real estate, when you live and breathe it, you're into every aspect that you can damn well get into. So yes, they are real estate entrepreneurs, JV specialists, mortgage agent specialists. They coach, and we're just absolutely honored to have them speak tonight. So I'll turn it over to Austin and Mayu.
Appreciate the intro, Ming. I think you hyped us up, so you inflated our ego.
No, they've done awesome. I'm sure you guys have seen them in publications and stuff like that. Like, I know you guys have done well when my mother's sending me your articles and saying, "Hey, do you know these guys?"
That's so funny.
So,
and what's funny is you type in real estate investing Toronto, their Toronto Life article ends up being the first thing you see on Google.
Yes.
so congratulations, guys.
We're like,
Mission accomplished.
we're like, damn it,
Very
we
well
want our
deserved.
Volition Properties website to go to go even
Competition.
rank that high. But no, it's an honor to have you guys. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for having us on. Well, Mike,
How would you like to
you too.
run this, guys? Because I know we had talked very kind of briefly about this. Did you want? I don't know if you've had anything pre-canned you want to go through. You want me to start?
So we actually have a
firing off
PowerPoint. Mayu
Whoa.
can throw it on. Yeah, we prepared for it. We wanted to add as much value as possible.
Shelby, can you make Mayu a co-host and then
She's doing
Mayu-
it as you speak. I see the it pop up.
Okay, good stuff. And then Mayu, you can take the reins after that.
Cool. I think we're good to go. Right? You guys can see my screen.
All right.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can see.
Mayu, wrong slide. I can see the presentation style, not the actual.
I could see all the racy content.
Yeah.
Still doesn't work. Hold on. You know what? I'm just gonna have to go like this. You guys can all see that there, right?
Yeah, we can see the PowerPoint.
Cool. Awesome. You wanna
Okay,
start?
yeah, we're all good to start.
Yeah.
Why does
Go
it feel like it's? You guys can read the text there as well?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
26-year-old full-time real estate investor and entrepreneur.
Okay, great, awesome. So we'll start off giving a bit of detail about ourselves, a quick summary. Ming kind of gave an intro, but we'll dive deeper into it. So my name's Austin Yeh. I'm 26 years old. I'm a full-time real estate investor and entrepreneur, and I actually was able to retire from my full-time job not too long ago, February 2021. So that was the reason I got into real estate in the first place. So definitely one of my biggest accomplishments in life thus far. But have some other goals and objectives in mind. And it didn't really take too long. I started with my first property closing in November 2018. So a little less than 3 years ago. In terms of background experience, before real estate, I worked in different corporate jobs, as I'm sure many people have. So I started off with audit at PwC, moved to technology consulting at Deloitte, strategy at Hydra One, and then most recently, retired my jersey in corporate and commercial banking at RBC. Hopefully I don't have to go back, but in terms of a real estate perspective, I own over 40 units, and that's comprised over, I think it's like 23 or 24 properties. And the portfolio is held in Windsor, the Greater Sudbury District, as well as Toronto. I'm also the founder of Rise Network. So as Ming mentioned, it's basically like a community of investors on Facebook. We have over 5,300 members now, I think. And it's just for people to get together, share their wins, obstacle, losses, ask questions. It's a community to support each other, regardless of your experience level. So we have new, intermediate, and experienced investors there. And on top of that, I'm also the co-host of the Rise Real Estate Investing podcast with Mayu, who's also speaking in today's event. And we were able to build up to 80, I think it was like 83 or 84K downloads from the last time I checked. And we started the podcast a little less than a year ago. So if you guys haven't checked that podcast out, make sure to do so. We actually had Ming as a guest recently. And lastly, I'm a real estate wholesaler and fix and flipper. So you know what? I'm going to get into wholesaling a bit later on, but I'll just pass the mic on to Mayu now.
Awesome. All right. So Austin's kind of the guy from the blog TO article. It's the guy that gets all the hate and the brand.
All the love too, right?
Want to point fingers,
yeah.
eh?
So I hopped on Rise with him sometime in 2020, I think. I think I was, attended their events before and stuff like that. But I think Austin, similar to Austin, but I started my journey back in 2015. That was, when I first started dabbling in real estate, bought my very first investment property, which is a Yonge and Eglinton condo. Took about 6 years for that thing to finish, but it was a good, nice lift in value. And I'd love to say I knew what I was doing, but we'll dive into that backstory later. Came from an audit and accounting background, so it's kind of no wonder that I was just ready to jump out of my corporate day job and jump into the real estate world. So made that switch similar to Austin in this year, a couple months ago. 2020, and I own over around 50 units or something like that in GTA, Windsor, New Brunswick, and Northern Ontario, which really is just Sudbury and Kirkland Lake up there. So similar to Austin, yeah, I host the Rise Real Estate Investing podcast, co-owner. We didn't know really what to call myself for the Rise Network, but I'm also a mortgage agent, which is essentially what I left my full-time job and just jumped into the mortgage world. With Synergy Mortgage Group, we primarily for investors, and I also coach individuals as part of Infinite Coaching, which is a coaching program run by Corey McKinnon for anyone that knows him. And I also flip real estate. I call it more as a hobbyist, where I just like to flip one piece of property at a time and make a good rate of return and call it a day. So that's both of our backstories. We both kind of had different starting off points, but I'd say we're doing similar but different things now. That'll lead us into the next topic.
Yeah, so there's always kind of a debate between cash flow and appreciation, and I think both strategies have their place depending on what your goals are. So Mayu started off with more of an appreciation strategy, which I'll get into a little bit later on, and I started off investing for cash flow, but I think now we're trying to find more of a balanced ground. So I will get into kind of my story. So as I mentioned before, I worked in several internships and full-time jobs in corporate. And one thing that I've realized is that every job got progressively better and better, but the corporate grind wasn't for me. And it was mainly just because of the politics, right? Like I couldn't see myself climbing up the corporate ladder and, you know, like having to play the corporate game to get up there. I wanted to have freedom and flexibility in my life and do things on my own term. An entrepreneur was, as an entrepreneur, that's the way to go then. So my goal, to retire from my full-time corporate job as early as possible, be able to travel, do anything I want on my own terms, right? And what that would mean that if I had to retire from my full-time job, then I would need income. I simply can't just pack up and say I quit and figure things out. I need some sort of steady income. And knowing that meant that I need to invest in cash flow. Because for me personally, for my goal, appreciation would be a great wealth builder, but it's not going to let me live off of it anytime soon, because appreciation is more of a long-term strategy, like 10 years and beyond, right? So I started investing in strong cash flowing properties as my priority, so I can generate enough income for me to retire from my full-time job. Some constraints that I had at that time is that my annual income was $70,000 after my bonus. So 65,000 base, 5,000 bonus, which isn't bad, but as we know, that can't qualify us for jack shit in GTA nowadays. My current saving was $40,000. That's even worse, because a parking spot at the time in downtown Toronto was 80 grand. So I couldn't even afford that. 40 grand wouldn't get you very far back then, and even less so nowadays. And also I was working a full-time job in downtown Toronto. So I had very limited time. I was working from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and my commute was also in total about 3 to 4 hours a day. So there was very little time to do anything else while still having some sort of social life. And I couldn't afford anything in the GTA, as I mentioned earlier. And whatever, even if I could over leverage myself to afford something, all entry level investments in the GTA for the most part are cash flow negative, like your condos, townhouses, not really detached. Those are not entry level. A lot of those were cash flow negative. And the only way to make it work was to Airbnb, which thankfully I didn't do that because Airbnb is a total mess in Toronto. And lastly, I knew nothing about real estate. So just to give you guys some insight with those constraints, the easiest one to solve is not knowing anything about real estate. So I didn't know what the MLS was, realtor.ca, listing agent, buying agent. I was completely green. What I did is during my 4-hour commute time, I listened to podcasts, audiobooks, read books, and educated myself. And then it was a matter of taking action. So we'll click to the next slide, Mayu. Okay, so I had $40,000 saved, about 70, the qualifying income would be 65 grand a year. Couldn't get anything in the GTA, but still wanted to invest in real estate and wanted to get a cash flowing asset. So I went on Google and found that one of the most affordable cities to invest in is Windsor, Ontario. And in terms of rent ratio to acquisition price, it's actually quite high when you compare it to many other cities in Ontario. And without doing much due diligence, to be frank with you, because I was just very eager to pull the trigger, I decided that's going to be the place I'm going to invest in. Over time, of course, I started to educate myself and realize that it actually has become a great place to invest in. A lot of development. But during that time, everyone was telling me, not to invest there because it's heavily reliant on the auto manufacturer industry, which is not true anymore. Those people are just listening to, as Ming would say, like headlines, right? And not really digging down into what's going on there. But everyone was against it. But I still decided to do it anyways. I made every mistake possible that you can make in the book. I worked with the first agent that I've ever spoken to who was not investor savvy or investor oriented. And she took me to a bunch of properties and said, okay, Austin, buy one. And I thought out of courtesy, I did have to buy a property. And the only one I could afford was 1187 Lincoln Road on there, which was 130K. So that was located in Windsor and Walkerville. Walkerville's like the trendy area with a lot of restaurants and bars, so on and so forth. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, detached single family home. Purchased it in September 2018 and closed on it in November 2018. So we'll hit the next slide. You might have to zoom in this a bit because... Okay, there you go. Hope you guys can see that. But just to give you some breakdown on the numbers on my first deal, it was listed at 150K. Back then, you could put offers with conditions. So a couple of things wrong with the property, and I renegotiated it down to 130 grand. The ARV means after repair value. After you finish all the renos, what's the property going to be worth? Was 178K. So just to give you an idea of how much money was out of pocket. Down payment was only 26 grand. Lawyer fees were 2K, land transfer tax 1K, renovations 25K, holding cost 3K, and my all-in cost was 57K. Keep in mind, I only had 40 grand to start. My renovation, I actually thought it'd be around 10 to 12K, and it really just ended up doubling because I didn't know what I was doing. And my holding costs also doubled as well because I underestimated that. Not having that money saved up, I had to ask my parents to kind of make up that shortfall, and my girlfriend as well. Fortunately, they were able to help me there and I was able to pay them back. Moving down to the monthly breakdown on how, like the cash flow numbers, I guess. So I was able to rent this property out for $13.75. This is below market rents, and I'll explain why I decided to go down this route. But I rented it out for $13.75, which realistically you could get $14.50 at that time. The expenses were as followed on there: mortgage, insurance, property tax, and also the interest rate at the time was 3.3%. I also account for vacancy, maintenance, and CapEx. Just as a heads up, that's something that Mayu and I always account for when building in cash flow, because your property is going to be vacant for 1 month when it turns around, and when it's vacant, you're paying that mortgage out of pocket. So you need to account for that. Same with maintenance and CapEx. Even though I fully renovated this property, something's going to happen. Like if there's a tenant turnover, I need to paint it. I might need to do a bit of flooring. So I need to account for those expenses, even though they don't come out of pocket today. After adjusting for that, my cash flow was $512. My real cash flow, if I don't include vacancy, maintenance, and CapEx, is actually, what is that? $636 a month. So just to give you some background on that rent, why I took a lower rent is because that tenant actually paid me 1 year rent upfront in cash. Which I couldn't say no to. So I took that money and bought another investment property instantaneously. So that actually helped me roll over to 2 properties. So getting into the juicy part, by the way, for those who don't know, this is called a BRRRR strategy: buy, renovate, rent, refinance. So we renovated the property for 25 grand and the appraised value came in at 178 grand in about 3 to 4 months. So that means when I was refinancing the property, I was actually able to pull out 38.4K. So just keep in mind, my initial investment was 57K. I'm refinancing out 38.4K in cash. So really, my initial investment was only 18.6K. And my cash flow after refinancing, because once you refinance, your mortgage payment goes up. My cash flow after refinancing was $345 a month, which is, pretty sweet for only an 18K investment. And I built out a 5-year projection, which I blew this out of water because appreciation went out of control. But cash flow for the 5 years would have been 20K if I held on to it. Mortgage pay down would have been 22K. Assuming a 3% appreciation, I don't know what that says, Mayu. Is that like whatever that is?
That's conservative.
Yeah,
28 grand.
28 grand over 5 years, right? But really it went up 100K in 2 years and I sold it. And the forced appreciation was 16K. So I was able to force appreciation into the property. So my total earnings in the 5 year would have been 88K with only, what is that? Like a 18K initial investment and only 4 months of work, right? So moving on to the next slide. I say all of this. Can we scroll up a bit? Yep. So I say all of this to kind of map out my game plan. Remember, I want to retire from my full-time job. I have proof of concept that this works. So this property was able to cash flow $345 per month or 4.1K per year. For me to replace a 60K income, that'd be $60,000 divided by $4,140, assuming I could buy the same property again and again and again, which is not the case because appreciation went out of control, but just baseline assumptions, right? So it would take me 15 properties for me to retire and replace my $60,000 income as long as I buy this type of property again. And if I could repeat this strategy every 4 months, because I've completed this in 4 months, that would be 15 properties times 4 months, which would mean it would take me 5 years to replace my $60,000 income, which is not bad at all. And also, this doesn't even include any forced depreciation. That property, I made 17K in forced depreciation, right? And also, it doesn't include natural appreciation and equity pay down. This is solely cash flow. So in 5 years, I could definitely retire from my job. And moving on, for those who are looking for, I guess this is just kind of a baseline formula for those who want to prioritize cash flow because they want to leave their full-time job. One thing that I would suggest looking at is the cash on cash return formula. So for those who don't know, cash on cash return is simply for every dollar you put into your property, how much money are you getting back in cash flow? So if my cash on cash return is 20%, that simply means for every dollar I put in the property, I'm getting 20 cents in cash flow, okay? So let's use a real life example, not a real life example. Let's use an example where someone wants to get 100K per year in cash flow and they can average a 20% cash on cash return. This is feasible, right? And Mayu and I really get well over 100% cash on cash return in almost every property we own after we refinance it in 3 to 4 months or 6 months, right? But like this is possible in a lot of markets. It's definitely possible in Windsor still, Greater Sudbury District where I'm investing. How you can calculate this is that cash on cash return formula. So you can average 20% cash on cash return and you want 100K in yearly cash flow. So you work backwards and you figure out that your net investment you need is 500K. So you need to deploy 500K to generate 100K in yearly income, assuming you can get an average of 20% cash on cash return every investment property. And that doesn't include forced appreciation, natural appreciation, and equity pay down. So that's pretty sweet. As long as you have $500,000, you can make $100,000, not including any of the other bonuses of real estate. So I'll pass it on to Mayu now.
Cool. All right, guys. So my journey, and I think we're just trying to showcase here that there's no kind of right or wrong route to going on your investing journey, right? So the way me and Austin both started was completely different. My goal back in 2015, I didn't really have a goal, right? My only objective was just don't waste money, right? And my dad basically said, you spend so much money, like why don't you go and buy a pre-construction project and you'll be so far in debt that you'll have to pay this debt down, right? And that was my only goal at that point. So got my foot in the door, secured a piece of property. And the other side of it was I just wanted to make sure that I had a piece of the Toronto real estate market. So I knew at any point I could live in the GTA, right? And that I think is a valid concern for a lot of people when you talk about the next generations and who's going to live where and who controls a lot of the real estate and so on, right? So I didn't have a lot of capital. The best approach that I saw that would allow me to get there was going to be the pre-con route. My constraints, I guess I had an annual income at that time, 50K. I had current savings of like $5,000. Lived at home, had a pretty nice life, nice little comfortable life living at my parents' house. But I didn't need a car, so I didn't really have any expenses, right? So I knew I could lever up. I could take on lines of credit and I'd be able to pay down at a rate of 1 to 2, maybe even higher per month, right? So I was very comfortable going into the real estate world. I didn't really know a whole lot about real estate, right? So the property that I thought I was buying was something like this, and it really looked like this for like 5 years, right? And so that's not to throw shade on the pre-construction market. I think the pre-construction strategy works for a lot of people. It gets people some great rates of return. And honestly, if you're going to do the pre-con, I just connect with realtors that, are super investor friendly and oriented like the guys here. But that just know the pre-con game inside and out. That wasn't me, right? I just got lucky. It's just straight up. So the pre-con game was nice, but there was still kind of a logic behind how I decided to get into the pre-con game, right? So I tried to spot the opportunity in the market. At that point, condos back then were something around like $200,000 to $350,000, like $1,000 for like a 1 or 2 bedroom. I think at that point, at least a 1 bedroom for sure, because I got a 1+10 at about $320,000, right? Detached properties in Toronto were still selling at that $700,000 to $800,000 mark. or higher, right? So to me, it was very simple. It was very straightforward. Either these condos are undervalued or these detached properties are overvalued. One of the two is going to kind of self-balance itself out in the coming years, right? So I got into the condo, seemed like a safer investment. Condo market kind of blew up in 2017, 2018 as kind of the detached market kind of plateaued there for a bit, right? As I'm sure a lot of you guys know. But for me, it was more so when everyone was looking at those detached properties, it was just go against the grain, right? And that's kind of been my motto for my entire real estate investing journey, right? So I ran my numbers. I looked at the condo at that time, the pre-con world. I've just really just tried to like minimize the bleed, right? I found a lot of these condo projects out there. They were selling you on inflated, rent guarantee numbers and rent rolls that like various individuals will tell you, right? So just do your own research, right? Start to validate those numbers. And I just got confidence in the condo market by that. And I think the hardest part for a lot of people that are getting started in real estate is honestly just going to be pulling the trigger, right? I think so many of us can analyze so many deals. And I coach a lot of new students now that are at various journeys in their real estate investing. And it all just comes down to, guys, like you spend like everyone in this webinar, I guess, is way more educated than I think myself or Austin were when we bought our first property, right? But so many of us are scared to pull that trigger and just buy the first property because it seems like such a big financial investment. But the reality is, even if you make a 10, 20, 30, call it 100K mistake, when you're like 20 to 30 years old, like you've got another 30 years to make up for that 100K mistake. And time kind of favors all real estate investors, right? So for the most part, I think the biggest and the hardest part with making that decision to buy was just pulling the trigger, right? So that was 2015, and I bought that first pre-con investment. And I really just rode the pre-con wave, right? Like I rode the condo wave. I closed it in 2020. It was worth 650. Obviously, everyone knows what happened with COVID. I ended up just selling it in 2021 for 635. Redeploy that capital into so many different properties. My wife / girlfriend at that time bought another pre-con in 2016. We recycled her capital. We sold that property in 2018. And then like once you start recycling capital, it just goes through so many different properties that honestly it's a mess, but it would have had to go through at least like 5+ units, right? So really I rode that appreciation wave, and I started off in the GTA market, benefited significantly from it. This is kind of like my timeline, right? 2015 bought that pre-con, 2016 my wife bought hers. 2017 I made a super stupid speculative play in the Toronto real estate market right at the peak. I think it was March or April 2017. Put a 5% down on property on Ajax. We're going to talk about that. I sold that this year and I made a whole $2,000 on it. So it's pretty crazy. But you know what? Like overall, can't diminish the Toronto real estate play. 2018, I did the Burr in Toronto on a bungalow out in Scarborough. Worked great, right? So the strategy does work. I wish I knew these guys back then, because what these guys are doing is basically the Burr on detached properties in Toronto on steroids, where they're making some crazy lifts. But I'll let them talk to you guys about that later. So anyway, so 2018 it worked well, but I still had very limited capital, right? So I got to this point where I think I had about 100K in capital. I did my proof of concept on the Toronto bungalow Burr, as you call it. Still left a good amount of money, but the strategy worked, and the theory of lifting the value of the property was proven, right? Which is the main part. So I bought at 650 or something like that. I spent about 40K on it, and now it's worth 800 plus. And I'm like, well, what happened there, right? So I had my proof of concept. Didn't have much money. So then at that time, that's when I really switched, and I went, I fully got a lot more educated on the Burr. It was legitimized at that point, but I left too much money in it. So I meant I had to find a new market, right? I didn't have a lot of capital. I knew for myself personally, mortgage qualifying was going to be an issue if I kept buying in Toronto, right? And the properties that I wanted, that I was looking at in the GTA, they didn't really cash flow, and they weren't necessarily risk-free. And what I mean by that is, not everyone does a whole lot of things legitimate and legally like these guys. They do more illegal stuff, right? So not everything in the GTA is legal. So there are, risks associated with that, right? And it's not to be discounted, the risk of having like an illegal basement unit or like 2 or 3 units in what should be a 1-unit house, right? So I didn't like that. And at that point, my goals had kind of changed more towards financial independence. And at this time, I kind of adopted more of a cash flow focused investment strategy. So that's my route. I started off on the appreciation, started off in Toronto, made quite a good amount of capital, right, in the GTA market, which I then redeployed through different markets. I still have property in Toronto. I do think for everyone, a balanced approach is the way to go, right? You want properties that will appreciate in value. You do need to have a solid base, because you can't build a base on kind of crumbling assets, right, that are like negative cash flow. So you want to have a solid base, but you still want to get the appreciation and have the cash flow. So that's where I'm at today, and that's kind of my journey. And then we'll go on to kind of how we both started really investing long distance, right? Because these strategies, they work anywhere, right? They work in Toronto, they work in Alberta, they work in New Brunswick, Ontario, like they literally can work anywhere. And as real estate investors, we can do a lot of this stuff from our desk, right? So, Austin.
Yeah, and I do see the questions popping up in the chat. We'll answer it at the end. So we'll just go through the presentation first. Make sure to continue dropping your questions on there. So you want to click the next.
We'll make sure to moderate that for you guys at the end, so you don't worry about it because it can get a little overwhelming sometimes.
Okay, perfect. So we'll jump to the next slide, Mayu, on investing long distance. Okay, so I think one of the questions that we did get is how do we go about investing long distance? And Mayu and I have done this several times, right? So Mayu, we'll talk to it a bit later, but he's done it in New Brunswick. He's investing in Northern Ontario and in Windsor. Myself, it's Northern Ontario and Windsor, so I had to do this twice and build the right power team. And that's really all it comes down to, is having the right power teams and systems. First and foremost, the first step whenever you get into long distance investing is understanding the local area. So I'm going to use Windsor for an example. You need to figure out what are A, B, C, D areas, because some areas might have more homeowners, other areas might have more tenants, other areas might be for students, other areas might have a lot of drug activity there. So you really need to know what you're going to get yourself into and what amenities and tenant quality to expect in each area. Now, how you build this knowledge first and foremost is just to give you a step. The first thing I do whenever I get into a new market, let's say Windsor, is I will go on meetup.com or Facebook and try to see if there's any local meetup in that city, right? And just connect with investors down there. I will make the commute down there just to network with these people for face-to-face time, because I find that extremely important. Or even getting on phone calls or Zoom calls with them is a great way to build relationships. So you connect with local investors. If you cannot find any local Facebook groups, try to join one of the bigger Facebook groups like Rise. I know we have investors all over Toronto, like Ontario. So like even in Timmins, Thunder Bay, we have investors everywhere, right? Like join one of those bigger Facebook groups and connect with local investors. Once you connect with local investors, you want to ask them for referrals to real estate agents, right? So let's say you speak to 3 or 4 investors and you get 3 different agent referrals, okay? Now you speak with each one of these agents and kind of have a set criteria of which one you'll feel most comfortable working with, right? The main thing for me is they have to have a lot of time. They have to have a team like an admin, because usually busy realtors, they don't have time to pull comms all day. So I like to work with their admin if I can just shoot it over to them and get the response quick. But I work with, I speak to investors and get referred to realtors. And once I get referred to realtors, what I do now is I say, look, do you have 20 or 30 minutes to get on a Zoom call? They say yes. If they say no, I'm not using them. But if they say yes, perfect. I'm going to get on a Zoom call with them, open up the map of Windsor and say, hey, look, I'm new to this area. I'm a serious investor. I want to purchase in the next 3 to 6 months. But I need to know what I'm getting myself into. Here's the map of Windsor. Can we quickly go through the different pockets of Windsor, the different tenant quality there, and like what you would classify as A, B, C, D neighborhoods, and leave it up to the realtor to kind of guide you along that process, right? The realtor should know this, and if they don't have time to do this, then it's your job to find another realtor, or they need to produce some sort of reports and systems so they can better educate their investor clients. Another thing that I do, if you don't have any luck where realtor is getting this information, now that you spoke to several investors and you spoke to several realtors, ask all of these people for property management recommendations, right? So let's say you speak to 3 realtors, investor-oriented realtors, you speak to 3 investors, and they give you 4 property management companies. Now you have 4 property management companies to vet through. You can vet each one and find out which one fits your criteria the most to manage your properties. And property managers should most definitely be able to sit down with you and give you this information, right? You don't want to move on to step 2 unless you know the different local neighborhoods in a particular city. Step 2 now is understand rents, right? So now you have kind of a Rolodex of people that you already connected through just by a referral basis. You got to figure out what the rents in the city are. And rents really differ based on neighborhood and based on property type. So what I like to do is put together this matrix that you see there. So you have A, B, C, D neighborhoods, and you have 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, detached houses or like semi-detached, whatever the case is. What I will do is I will speak to a property manager, or I would speak to a realtor, more than likely he's a property manager, and say, hey, can you give me an idea of what an A neighborhood 2-bedroom would rent for. And they might say, Austin, if your property's a crap shack, it'll rent for $1,000. If it's gorgeously renovated, $1,300. And I'd put that in my matrix, $1,000 to $1,300. How about a B neighborhood? Austin, the exact same, only difference is your tenant quality. Cool, I'll fill that in my matrix, right? So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm filling this matrix out based on information I am collecting, right? And once I fill this out, I might do the same thing with a duplex or a triplex, because typically multi-units rent for less than single family homes, of course, because there's more tenants in one building. So I'll do a similar matrix in a multi-family. And once I have all of that, I understand revenue inside out. I understand location inside out of that pocket. Now moving on to step 3, understanding expenses. When you calculate cash flow, we know their rents now. We need to know what the expenses are. Fortunately, expenses are almost identical in any city you go to. In terms of from a cash flow analysis, the only difference is going to be your property tax, which your realtor should be able to provide you. They should get you an impact report or just be able to pull the property tax. Or you can find that on Google in a lot of cities. I know City of Windsor has their public property tax records on there. And insurance costs. Insurance costs is going to differ from city to city. Super easy. Just see a property you like on the MLS. Call TD Bank, go on Sonnet, go on a couple of digital online softwares. It's not going to be the best rate, but it gives you a benchmark and idea of what to plug in when you calculate cash flow. So expenses are relatively straightforward. It's not going to change from city to city. Next slide. Step 4, understand after repair value, right? If you're going to do the BRRRR strategy, which is what me and Mayu do, you need to know what the value of the property is going to be after renovations. I mean, the answer is simple. You need to just work with your rockstar realtor. And to this day, I bombard my realtors with comps if I'm interested in a property. And for the most part, they send me comps in a very timely manner. But one thing to know, and this is not for all realtors, but ARV is very subjective in value, and you need to understand that realtors, they're there to they get paid when they make a sale, right? So what I always like to do is wherever I go, I want to vet it against an investor. So once I get a comp set from a realtor, I'll go to one of the investors I networked with earlier. Hey, my realtor sent me these comps. Do you have like 10 minutes to chat? I'll swing you $20 just to chat for like 10 minutes. I'm a big believer in paying to get value, right? Especially when you're dealing with someone who's an expert. So yeah, I'll get in a call with them for 10 minutes. Say like, here are the comp sets. Like, what do you think? Is this property actually going to be worth what my realtor is telling me in terms of ARV? They say yes, they say no. You make the adjustment accordingly. And as you do this more and more, you get a better understanding of what ARV is in different areas. But really, it's going to come down to your realtor. Your realtor is going to be the power team member for helping you understand ARV, right? And step 5, determining the cost of projects. This differs from city to city. So like in Toronto, replacing a roof is going to be like 50% cheaper than Northern Ontario, just because of the amount of roofers available in Toronto versus Northern Ontario. So what I like to do is when I spot a couple of properties I like to have contractors walk through. I'll get multiple contractors to walk through even without me firming it up, and I'll pay them for their time. I'll be like, look, this is going to take you 30 minutes. I'll give you $100 or like $50 just to go there for 30 minutes and tell me what needs to be done and get me an estimated quote, right? And I do this with multiple contractors. Now, how do I get a hold of these contractors? Well, you ask your investor friends that you networked with first. That's the first step. Now you ask your realtors. Your realtor should know a contractor. If they don't, they are not investor oriented. You don't want to work with them, right? So your realtor should have a power team set up for you, and your property manager may not know contractors, but they probably do know handymen, plumbers, electricians, because they use them in rotation. If they don't, throw them out. You don't want to use them as a property manager, right? But you ask all of these people for recommendations, and now you maybe get recommended 3 or 4 contractors. Same thing, call them up, vet them out, throw them in there for a walkthrough, pay them for their time. Don't waste their time, right? Because again, time is money. I don't think anyone would like their time being wasted. So pay them for their time and then figure out, have a better idea what construction cost is going to be in that area. Really, I only do this once for one property, and then I have a general understanding after that. Step 6, now that you understand what's ABCD, what the rents are, what expenses are, what the ARV of a property is, what more do you need to calculate numbers, right? Like you have everything there to calculate the numbers numerically. Step 7 is now you place offers. What I like to do when I'm investing long distance is I like to get a home inspector or my trusted contractor in there before I put in a clean offer. And the market, to be competitive or to get a good price, you likely need to go clean. So I get a pre-inspection done, and I like to get inspectors in there because they're getting paid whether the property is good or not. It doesn't matter to them, right? And then once I have confidence that the property is what I expected, I can plug in my estimated construction costs. Me and Mayu do this all the time is we'll send our contractor in there. We'll be like, look, like this is we want to like replace the flooring, do this, that, whatever. Give us a ballpark of what it's going to cost. We're not going to hold you against it because you didn't get to detailedly go through the exact quote, but on the higher end of your previous project, how much did that cost? And they might say like 30K, and I'll take that and plug that in my calculator, right? I might even tag a 10% premium on top of that. But yeah, now we get people in for walkthroughs, and then you place clean offers if need be. Now, during the renovation, like how do I personally keep up with renovations? Well, there's no perfect science to it, but what I found works best for me, and this is how I manage most of my renos long distance, is that I try to have a minimum of 2 touch points a week. Sometimes it's more. It's 2 formal touch points. At the beginning of the week, I say, hey, look, what's on the agenda today? Like, what are you, not today, this week. What are you planning to accomplish this week? And then they tell me whatever. And at the end of the week, I get photos and videos and say, what did you accomplish this week? What went wrong? Do we need to make any changes? So on and so forth. And throughout that week, we'll send text messages back and forth here and there. And here's an important part is that I'm not physically there to check up on the property. So what I do is, and I'll say this again, I pay people for their time, right? Like I know a bunch of local investors I network with. I know my property manager who will help me out. So I'll pay them like, hey, here's $50. Can you spend 45 minutes in my property for $50 cash, right? Here's a list of things the contractor should have done. Can you check if these things are done? They're done to good quality, and can you take photos and videos and let me know on recommendations on what else needs to be done? So now you have a neutral party walking through it, so you don't need to be there yourself, right? When you have that power team set up and you have those boots on the ground people, I don't think you physically need to be there to manage a property. And Mayu he's a prime example. He'll talk about like doing that in New Brunswick, which is insane, right? But like he's able to execute it and execute the burst strategy. All that means is that your cost, it might go up more than an average local investor, but you just got to find a better deal than them. You spend all your resources finding that better deal, which we'll get into a bit later. But that is it on my end. So Mayu, I'm going to throw it to you.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that Austin thinks I'm the expert in it. I think by far, I don't think Austin leaves his condo. And this guy's like wholesaling all over Ontario. The guy pays like he wants to go like take pictures of his stuff and just do random shit for him. So that's pretty awesome. So really there's an alternative method here, right? And this is kind of, it doesn't work for everyone, and it goes back to the concept of joint ventures, right? So I know Ming mentioned that we'd be talking about this early on as well, and just to touch on it. So really what I mean by an alternative method here is Austin did a lot of this groundwork in Windsor, right? Like he spent time, he went up there, he visited Windsor. He, built power team members, contractors. He went through different property managers. He, you make mistakes. You invest in the wrong areas. You mess up a deal or two here and there. You work with maybe the wrong realtor who's not investor focused, right? So you make these mistakes, right? And then there's me, and I kind of was doing my own thing in Toronto. I knew about Windsor. I wanted to jump into Windsor. And then I went to a meetup event, and I met Austin and a couple other guys who were all talking about Windsor. And I'm like, okay, like I need to get into this market, but I don't really want to build all these connections on my own. I don't really want to do a lot of this work, right? I'd rather just take a shortcut, right? I just love taking the shortcuts. So really the joint venture model is how myself and Austin met, right? For our very first deal, I went to Austin. I'm like, look, man, like I've got the money. I'm more than happy to be a capital partner for one of your deals that you bring forward, right? And very early on, a joint venture can be whatever you want to structure it as, right? You don't have to be passive. You don't have to be active. You don't have to do whatever you want. It's literally just 2 people or 2 or more people kind of combining resources to kind of achieve something that's a common objective, right? So I went to him, I said, I'll fund the capital, but I want to learn everything from you, right? Like I want to come with you to Windsor. I want to see these properties. I want to see what kind of renovations work, because that's where you kind of need to rely on more investor oriented people, because the same renovations that you would do, for example, at like a rougher area in Toronto is probably not what you can do at High Park, right? Similarly, those kind of renovations that you do in Toronto, you better not do them in Windsor. You're really going to mess up, right? So I wanted a good idea of what kind of renovations I needed to be doing. I wanted to meet the contractors, bring them into my own power team, meet the property managers, develop a relationship with them. And I really just leveraged him, right? So I attended networking events. I met him. got familiar with the market, became a capital partner. Anyone that wants to do the same thing, you could honestly just go out and find an investor that's already doing it, right? Hop on with them as a joint venture partner, leverage their knowledge and their resources, right? And then I'm saying be a capital partner, not a passive partner, right? If you're a passive partner, you're not really going to learn a whole lot, right? As a capital partner, you have the ability, sure, you're funding it, right? And you can structure whatever kind of deal you want. So you have whatever kind of clauses in your agreement, but learn as much as you can during that process, right? So learn and leverage, learn the process, learn the market, leverage their power team, and then you start hunting for deals and raising capital on your own and doing it on your own, right? So this is just like what we called like an alternative method to investing long distance. It helps you compress a lot of time because that same, like as soon as I decide I'm going to invest in Windsor, I think two weeks later, I met up with Austin, we had a lunch, and then a week later, Austin calls me and he goes, yeah, I've got this deal you want to hop on. So that was like a 3-week process from when I decided I'm going to invest in Windsor to deals locked up, right? Super easy, compresses a lot of time. And I'm just really big on compressing a lot of time, whether it's through coaching, through joint ventures, whatever it is, right? And that's just a shameless plug for me being a mortgage agent to be part of your power team. So there it is. The next story, so how far can you go, right? So now proof of concept, Windsor works really well. Went ape shit in Windsor while the market was low, while the prices was good, and just bought up as much as we could, right? And then at this point, you start looking at other markets. And I'm really fascinated with the US, for example, but I wasn't about to make that leap down to the US right away. So instead, I decided to go and look at New Brunswick, right? So here's where I basically applied the same steps 1 to 9 that Austin talked about earlier, right? So what I did there, what I found the most useful was I spoke with property managers. They give you a very honest answer, right? Or at least like they might actually give you an overly conservative answer, right? Because the property manager is going to have to lease out that same property for you, right? So they tell you I can get you $1,000 a month, and then they, you know, then I sign up with them, and then they can only give me $850. Like they're pretty close to getting fired, right? So a property manager, sometimes I find they go overly conservative, where they go, oh, we can only get you like $750 a month because they want their job to be as easy as possible, right? But it balances out with different opinions that you hear, right? Understand what everyone's bias. So like related to that is understand what everyone's bias is and interpret their answers accordingly, right? Will a seller lie to you about what a property could be re-rented out for? Yes. Will a wholesaler lie to you about ARV? Yes, right? So everyone's got a bias. It's just understand what that bias is, right? And act accordingly to that, right? And obviously surround yourself with power team members that, you know, they understand that they can build a viable business with you, right? So it's not a one and done transaction, right? So if you're investing, if you're, you know, connecting with the realtor, make sure you guys have that relationship where I'm not just buying one property and I'm done. I want to buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 properties, right? And then they see the value in you as well, and hopefully they'll build that relationship equally with you as well, right? Wholesalers exist and off-market deals exist in every market. We'll touch on this next, but honestly, realtors are some of your best sources for off-market deals, right? Because there's a lot of realtors, especially those that work with investors, that have pocket listings, that have a client that goes, I don't really want to sell, but if you can get me 1.1, 1.2 million, whatever the number is, yeah, I guess I'll sell, right? And there's a lot of that and a lot of off-market deals that happen even with realtors involved, right? So definitely, you know, try to find those deals as well. Network with other investors, get recommendations from property managers, contractors, and realtors from other investors. Get an idea of how the real estate investing community works in the market you're looking at, and go to that local market wherever you're investing in it. It's pretty important to try and visit it. New Brunswick was on lockdown, so I didn't really have that option. But yeah, these are 2 of the properties that we ended up buying there, and they're pretty dope. And you know, they're going through the burr right now. We haven't refinanced it yet, but no signs that like anything's going to go not according to plan. So that's New Brunswick, and then we'll talk a little bit about finding deals, and then oh yeah, this is me. All right, so finding the deal source, right? So when you first get started, everyone wants to buy off market, right? And anyone want to guess how I guess myself and Austin bought our first couple properties? It's perfectly fine if you don't. It's basically just click a button. Okay. It's honestly just realtor.ca, right? I think most new investors, we get so hung up on this topic. And I know I just talked about off-market deals, but we get so hung up on this topic of finding off-market deals, buying wholesale deals, sourcing our own deals, all that stuff. The biggest market for real estate is the market, right? Like realtor.ca or MLS, right? Investor-oriented realtors, they sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, they have pocket listings and they offer really good value and guidance, right? And I think for a lot of new investors, which I'm assuming a good chunk of you guys are, if you're new investors, really you need someone in your corner to advise you on when you're going wrong, right? And that's where I really find investor-oriented realtors really helps you. Other investors, sometimes they have deals that they just can't close, right? And people have an abundance of deals sometimes that trade off market with other investors. And there's a lot of people that kind of control the inventory, as we call it, right? So it's interact with people that control this inventory. So it could be property managers. A lot of property managers have access to deals that are just not on the market yet, right? If you think about the funnel of people that touch a deal before it hits the market, there's actually quite a few different individuals, right? So sure, you got your realtors, you've got property managers, you got junk removal companies, you got pest control people, you've got anyone that can kind of deal with mold remediation companies, all those different kind of services like plumbers, electrician, people that deal with really distressed properties are the people that you want to get in touch with, right? And those individuals are kind of sources of deals that will A, cost you nothing, B, you're building out a network in that community, right? Because at some point you're going to need a plumber, you're going to need junk removal, you're going to need pest control, you're going to need all of these different people. And by touching them and accessing them and just telling them, hey, like, look, if you know of any properties where the landlord is tired of owning it and managing it and might be interested in selling, I'm happy to pay a referral fee. That's a great way to get in front of some potential deals. At the worst case, you've just built out a great power team and a great Rolodex of people that you can call at any point that you have problems, right? So those are really what we did early on, right, to find out our own deals, and then also touch on some more advanced ones.
It's a nice picture you got there for investor realtor. I just wanted to point that out, guys.
We searched best realtor on Google, and that popped up, so we just
right
threw it on there. Okay, so this is another kind of cheat-free lead source. It's Kijiji, obviously, and there's two ways to go about Kijiji. One of the more unique things that Mayu and I have done, and my wholesaling team has done as well, is just message people in for rent ads. So we message, we basically, let's say we're going on Windsor, we search Windsor rentals, right? Landlords are constantly listing properties for rent. Some of them are not in great condition. However, I just I blast all of them with a message saying, hey, my name is Austin. I'm not interested in renting your place, but if you ever considered selling it, please do let me know. I'm a fix and flipper around the area. I can make cash offers. You can reach me at this email, at this phone number. If you know anyone else looking to sell, let me know, because I'm always buying, right? So you kind of leave that message, and I want to say like 9.9 times out of 10, you don't get any response, or they tell you to screw off. But there's that chance that you still do get a deal. And I'm going to give you some examples, right? Some real numbers. So my wholesaling team, Ontario Property Deals, me and my partner, we assigned over $100,000 in total wholesale fees just doing this strategy. And one of our bird dogs recently, I don't know if he's on there, his name is Pearpaw. We wholesaled a deal for him for like a $50K fee, and he just did this strategy, right? And this was only like 3 weeks ago. So it does work, doesn't work often, but it's about frequency and consistency. Also, with this strategy, I ended up being able to purchase my primary residence in Toronto in May 20. It says 2021, but it was really May 2020. So in May 2020, I was doing this strategy and ran across a deal, a 730 square feet condo in Bathurst and Lakeshore, brand new built. Like it was final occupancy was in December 2020, right? So like brand new. I picked it up for $600,000. So that's like $820 per square feet for a brand new condo in downtown Toronto that's never been occupied. Pretty sweet. And that's by doing this strategy here, right? So it does work, just about being consistent. Another thing is posting we buy houses cash ads on Kijiji. And this again is frequency and consistency. One key tip I'd say is make sure you're always on the first page, maybe the top 3 or 4 results. And through this strategy, my wholesaling company has wholesaled also over $100,000 just by doing this. And again, got to post frequently. I have a little example there of kind of our company's post. So my business partner, Waylon, you can see, I don't know if you can see him there, but him and his wife are on that picture. It makes it more personable. Then the description's on there. I guess if we share this PowerPoint, people can read the description themselves. So I'm not going to read through it right now, but we'll move on to the next slide. And then another way to get deals is via wholesalers. Now I can go into like other things like self-source deals like mailers, bandit signs, digital ads, but just for the sake of time, and I don't think a lot of people will have the time to do those things. I'm going through kind of the cheapest and least time-consuming strategies. By the way, the Kijiji ones, you can hire a virtual assistant to do all of that, so it doesn't take any of your time. Our virtual assistant does everything now. So anyways, going into wholesalers, that's another lead source. So I would join every single wholesale real estate list. For those of you guys who don't know what wholesaling is, just a quick layman term summary. Basically, it's an investor who puts out marketing material like mailers, flyers, bus ads, radio ads, TV ads, digital ads, to basically try to get properties off the market from motivated sellers who don't care about getting the maximum dollar value because they prioritize a quick sale, the least amount of headaches, no walkthroughs. Maybe they're embarrassed of the property, whatever the reason is. They don't want to sell. They don't want to sell on the MLS. They're trading off equity, so a lower purchase price, for better terms and privacy. So our job as wholesalers is to get those deals, get them under contract at below fair market value, and then assign the deal over to an investor for an assignment fee. And the investor will close on the property, and that property should still have meat on the bone for the investor as well. So that's what a wholesaler is, right? Make sure to join every single wholesaler real estate list. Wholesale, I think I mentioned that already, what they do. So just one thing to be aware of, these deals are under market value, but not always. Some of them are above market value, some of them are at market value. And I'm going to touch on that a bit later on. Things to note about wholesaling is that wholesaling is an unregulated industry. So there could be some misrepresentation, and it happens common with newer wholesalers who don't know what they're doing. They might misrepresent the property. So make sure you do your due diligence, right? Or you want to work with a trusted wholesaler who has a strong brand and reputation to back them up, right? And also, not every deal is under market value. What I'm noticing is like the market has been flooded with wholesalers who just want to lock anything up and just make a $5,000 spread, but they're locking it up at market value or above market value. And they're inflating their comps, as Mayu stated earlier, to like things that shouldn't even be compared, like a 3,000 square foot beautiful house to 1,000 square feet bungalow, right? Like those are not comparables, but we're
really
seeing
glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
It's happening a lot. You're right, and it's getting worse. So absolutely make sure you're working with somebody reputable like yourselves.
Exactly. Like you want to work with someone reputable, and then you still need to have a power team. So I always suggest people to have a realtor, even if they're buying deals from us or any other reputable wholesaler, because you want to confirm comps with a realtor. Like any sophisticated investor is not going to rely on the due diligence of someone else. They're going to do their own due diligence. So make sure to have your realtor double check the comps to see if the numbers make sense in your perspective. If you have any questions in regards to the deal, ask the wholesaler, right? Like it shouldn't be a crime to ask questions. And also make sure you have enough money for the assignment fee. So for example, if I get something under contract for $100,000 and I assign it to Mayu for 120 grand, Mayu has to give me 20 grand in cash on the closing day. Right? So like it's something that typically, most cases, a bank will not finance it. So be prepared to have that money in cash, or you need a bit more capital, but the property might be worth 150 grand on the market. So Mayu still makes that meat on the bone, although he has to put out more cash, like physical cash. Yeah, so that's the quick note on wholesalers on how to find them. Shameless plug on my end. I'm a wholesaler. Me and my business partner are, and you can find us at www.ontariopropertydeals.ca. We wholesale deals all across Ontario. So we wholesale deals in Toronto, Etobicoke, Kingston, Windsor, Sudbury, all over Ontario. We do marketing everywhere. Also, not only join our wholesale list, join everyone's wholesale list. You can do that by going on Facebook groups and just searching private deals or searching off market. You search those two things, you'll see a ton of wholesalers on there, right? And also a quick creative strategy. If you go to the slide above again, back to the Kijiji one, a lot of wholesalers are posting these Kijiji ads saying we buy houses cash. Call these numbers and say, hey, I'm not looking to sell a house, but are you a wholesaler? Yes, can you add me on your list, or how can I get on your list? Because the more off-market deals you get, the better. The more eyes you have on different deals, and you can pick and choose which one makes sense for your particular strategy. But those are some quick notes on finding deal sources. So we're on to the next section.
All right, guys. So ultimately, I think, the entire how to find deals section is really just meant to show you that deals can be anywhere and can come in any sort of like referral source, right? It's all just about touching as many things as possible so that eventually down the road, as you kind of get deeper and deeper into this and you persevere and you're more consistent, deals just start kind of coming at you, right? Deals, now that you have deals, you'll start to get to a point where you've got deals and you've got no money, right? So really, what's your only move here? You got to find the money, right? So this is kind of where having the brand, having a business, and having a website early on are kind of vital, right? Because you just want to start to declare and show your competency, right? So what we did early on and what we do now is slightly different, but there are still a lot of similarities. Early on, like we did a lot of blog posts, right? So if you look up Austin's LinkedIn, I don't remember if you did it on Facebook or not. My Instagram and LinkedIn, I think, have some blog posts, right? This is really just where you're kind of being genuine. You're sharing and educating the world, right? And no one's ever gotten any sort of hate for educating someone else on what they know, right? It's someone might disagree, and then I go, okay, cool, you might be right. You've got a point there, whatever, like so be it, right? Leverage other people's contents, right? So Austin's messaged me so many times. He goes, Mayu, I'm stealing exactly what you wrote in this article. I'm repurposing it, retyping it, and releasing it to the world for my own audience, right? But ultimately, the more people that know what you do, the more competent you are, and the more you can attract capital and attract joint venture partners. And I think every real estate investor at some point leverages some sort of other people's resources, right? Whether it's money, deals, capital, whatever it is, right? Before and after pictures, right? So this is when you guys start doing more and more deals, and you've got before and after pictures of your renovations. Put this out there into the world, right? Show your competency within the space, right? People want to give money to people that they think are experts in their field, and really the before and afters just kind of demonstrates that expertise, right? Infographics once again goes back to kind of educating your audience, right? And then get on other people's platforms, kind of like what we're doing here, what other people like have gone on our podcast for, YouTube videos, live streams, whatever it is. Shout out your message, make sure the world knows exactly what you guys are doing, right? So very early on, I was a polar opposite where I just really didn't go on social media, right? I didn't really talk about real estate investing. I didn't see the need to. To me, it was always, I've got my own money, I'm on my own journey, and I can do this on my own. Don't really see a need to kind of raise capital, but there's a point in time where everyone kind of runs out of their own resources, or you could at least be 10 times more efficient, right? If you're doing one deal at a time, you get to a point where you maybe want to do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 deals, right, at a time. And really, that's going to be really challenging if you try to do it alone versus if you start bringing in other people's resources, right? Whether that's a joint venture partner or a capital partner. The second thing is really don't focus on finding the money. Don't go after people trying to raise money. Don't go after people saying, hey, do you have 50 grand? Do you have 50 grand? Like, does everyone have 100 grand? Like, what's going on, right? Instead, just attract the money to you, right? So this goes back to what I was talking about earlier on. Demonstrate the credibility and people will really want to invest with you, right? Have a social presence so that people trust you, right? Because there's, as someone that has a social presence, that's part of kind of a real estate investing community, you've got more to just losing money, right? You've got credibility and branding to lose, right? Which is super hard to build up and very easy to lose, right? Third thing I'll say is, be personable and be trustable, right? Myself and Austin, like if you listen to our podcast, we swear left, right, and center, right? And that's just our personality, and we're just very genuine about it. And it doesn't really change when we're on one medium versus the other, right? So be personable, but watch your brand at the same time, right? So as much as I say that we swear left, right, and center, that is still part of my brand, right? Like I hop on a call with my mortgage clients. I'm like, yo, what's up, guys? Right? That's just how the way I answer my phone, right? So be personable, watch your brand at all times. So make sure on the things that matter, which are your competency, your trust, your relationships, value those kind of and nurture those, and that will attract money to you, right? And capital to you. The last thing I'll leave you guys with is kind of just provide value first, always, right? So provide value without really having an ask or a want, right? Give without taking, and people will be left wondering why, right? If you hop on a phone call with someone and you don't have an ask for them, they're going to leave that conversation going, holy shit, Mayu was such a great guy, right? But really they're my Rolodex, and like some point down the road, you don't know when that's going to benefit you, right? So just keep giving without kind of taking, and do what you love, and it won't really feel like work, right? So I'm sure a lot of you guys are here kind of looking for that switch in your career journeys, to kind of pivot to things that you enjoy doing, right?
Also, go back to the other slide real quick. Give us a follow on Instagram. What is it? Mayu Thava and Austin Yeh 6.
Dude, I just said value first without asking for anything. You
Well, we did give value.
Drop
the first
all your
slides.
contact information as well at the end of the at the end of the presentation. We'll put it in the chat so you guys can get your follow.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
And the one thing I forgot to say is there's no right way to do this, right? Like me, myself, like and Austin, like so many other people, we might look back 5 years down the road and we're gonna be doing something completely different. And we go, why the heck did we write those blog posts, right? But there's no wrong way to do it. I'd say the only wrong thing to do is not to educate the world, not to share the world what you're doing. Even if you're on your very first deal and you're hunting, and if you want to provide your realtor with some value, right? When you're out there hunting for a deal, say, post something on your story that says, hey, looking at a deal with Ming, right? And give Ming that clout, right? So always just provide value, whether it's to your audience or to your realtor or your power team members. Shout out everyone from the top of your lungs and just provide value to everyone. Cool. So I'll pass it off to Austin.
Yeah. So carrying off of that, and really the digital age, you guys probably heard Grant Cardone say this before, but attention really equals currency. So this is why you're seeing all these big YouTubers make a ton of money, TikTokers who are 17 years old making more money than I've probably ever seen in my life. It's really just a digital age, right? The more eyes that you have on you, the more likely you're going to be able to convert people to be JB partners, private lenders, or buy a product and service from you. And we see this time and time again. Even from our coworkers or friends, they make their life seem better than it actually is on Instagram because they want to get positive attention to them. Okay, so although you want to grab as much attention as possible, and that best route through that is via social media like LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Branding also matters, which is what Mayu mentioned earlier. Just to give some theory behind it, I think some of the people in the audience might have heard this before. They heard me talk about this, but it's an example I love to talk about. Branding is important, and I'll give you a real corporate example of this. So in the 1980s, Coca-Cola was the leading beverage company by market share by far. There was no other beverage company coming even close. And people think they're rational beings. People try to rationalize everything. But reality is not everyone's rational. Most people are emotional. That's what people are. But people rationalize Coke being number one because they're like, we like the taste of Coke better than every other beverage out there. And then Pepsi introduced the Pepsi Challenge in the early 1980s, which basically is a blind taste test. You taste the Coke, you taste the Pepsi, which one do you like more? Most people preferred the sweetness of Pepsi, and for the first time in 1983, Pepsi started outselling Coke. And this was through marketing. This is through Pepsi doing, I guess, a genius marketing strategy and campaign. And what did Coke do? Coke didn't retaliate by branding back. Coke didn't double down on branding. Instead, they changed the formula of their product, which got huge backlash. And then they ended up having to change their formula back to their normal formula. So they tried to change the product. That wasn't the issue. Branding was the issue. They took all of the money, not all of their money, that's way over exaggeration. They took money and then they, I don't know why I said that. They took money and they doubled down on branding. And once they doubled down on branding, they became the 5th most valuable brand in the world and also the leading beverage company again. See, they tried to compete on the formula, which is not what they should have competed based on. They should have competed based on marketing and branding because that's how people make their decisions. Even though people say they're rational, most people will make decisions based on emotional reasons. So we move on to the next slide. Knowing this information, you got to ask yourself, do people like you? Do they trust you? Do they know you? Do they relate to you? People trust you by showing that you're an expert. You're an expert in real estate, your particular topic. Okay, this person knows what he's doing. He's educating other people, walking them along the journey, showing his progress, recording his document. Do they like you? As Mayu said, you got to be personable. Be yourself, but also have intention behind it. Like, if you are like too much, maybe strip that back a bit, obviously, like know who your audience is, but you need to be personable and make sure that people do like you at the end of the day. So on my Instagram, I do post like hip hop because I love hip hop. I post like other elements to mix it up, to have conversations with people. Do they know you? People by nature know you when you're both personable, document your journey, and give background into yourself. Be like vulnerable, right? Like talk to why are you getting into real estate outside of just financial freedom? Like dig deeper than that, right? And so people get to know you on a more personable level. And with all of that, do people relate to you, right? Because generally I like to do business with people I relate to. I come from a similar background to you. Like for me, my parents didn't grow up with much. So when I JB with someone, I want to see them as a young, hungry hustler. That's someone who I want to partner with, right? So make sure you build a brand where people trust, like, know, and relate to you. And your content should be bucketed into one of those categories. If it's not bucketed into one of those categories or it hinders one of those categories, you're doing it wrong. And once all four of these things check mark off, people might decide to invest with you, or they might want to see the numbers of the deal and then invest with you. But some people may just completely foresee the numbers and directly invest with you. But no one is investing with you despite how juicy the numbers are if they don't trust you, like you, know you, or relate to you. That is the prerequisite for someone to even consider investing with you despite numbers. I'm going to just go over this real quick, but here are just some ideas to build brand equity. Association. So associate yourself with people with credibility. So when I got started off, I worked under Mike Rosehart, who's branded as Canada's youngest retiree, had 60 properties, not units, properties at the age of 26. I worked for him for free. Sorry. And also media coverage as well. So if you can publish an article or be published in an article, be on a YouTube feature. So recently I was featured on Matt McKeever's channel. Write a newspaper article, be featured on a new newspaper article, like Volition Properties wrote an article for HGTV. That is a great way to build brand equity, right? And get exposure. Social media, be active on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, every social media platform, YouTube. Googleability. When someone Googles your name, is it just photos of you partying? Because that's not the professional image. Like, be personable, but that's not the professional image you want to put out there, right? They want, like, people want to see your LinkedIn, show that you're serious about your craft. So when someone Googles your name, you can't be a complete ghost, right? Or you also can't be like too revealing of your life where it becomes detrimental. So make sure it's professional when someone Googles you. Logo, website, business card, that's a given. If you have those things, you're automatically more credible, right? Personal image, dress the part. Like, if you're gonna be trying to raise money from doctors and dentists or like eye bankers, don't go like, you know, in the shorts and like a tank top to try to raise capital from them. Dress the part. Articles, blogs, literature. You can write a PDF book, write blogs and articles, as Mayu said. Public speaking events like this. If you jump on a public speaking event, great way to build credibility. Document your track record on social media or any other platform. Consistency in business dealings, as Mayu stated. Be consistent in how you talk with others. That formulates as part of your brand and your brand equity. Podcast features. So jump on a podcast, start a podcast. That's a great way. Creating an event or meetup or being involved in an organizing team. So I founded Rise a couple of years ago. Mayu joined me in Rise, and then we grew it and made it even bigger. And now we're making it even bigger by getting more organizing members to help us, right? So they're leveraging the credibility of brand to build their brand as well. Why did I say brand? They're leveraging the credibility of Rise to build their brand as well. Creating an event or meetup, or I already said that. Publishing a free product, like courses or books. Could be a 10-pager, right? It's just giving out content. And what was the last one? Have a compelling and relatable story, which I discussed a bit earlier. But those are just some ideas to build brand equity. I think someone mentioned Money People Deal in the chat. Have this book beside me right now. A lot of those tips came from this book. So if you're looking to raise capital, strongly suggest reading this book and taking action on it. Last shameless plug here. Want to talk a bit about the Rise Network. As I mentioned earlier, it's a community of investors. All we do there is really hold events, have people kind of support each other along the way. We try to add as much value as possible. We try to have our community members add value. It's just really a support group for investors, right? Because believe it or not, we're on this journey. I wouldn't say alone, but the vast majority of people in our network, like our friends that we grew up with, family members, are not going to be on this journey with us. It's if you do have those people with you, you're very fortunate. You're very few people do. But we have communities like this to help inspire, motivate, and assist investors. You can find us on Rise Network on Facebook. We have the podcast, the Rise Real Estate Investing Podcast. We have our Instagram page, so on and so forth. But I think I'm rambling on about this plug. But that's a wrap. So that's all we have presented today. It was a lot of content. But if you guys have any questions, do let us know.
That was amazing, guys. So thanks a lot for that. There's so much there to unpack. As you're chatting, I was making notes as well because, like, basically everybody tonight got a 1-hour course on real estate investing because you went through like JVing, branding, your deal finding, like freaking everything. And like, thank you. I thought you would just take one topic and talk about that. Like basically you just gave a course. So this is fantastic. People have been dropping their email in the chat because they know that at the end of the presentation, we always post presentations. If you guys are cool with sharing the slides, people will get notifications about that stuff as well. There's really good content in here. A couple of things I want to call out just to folks. I want to make sure they didn't miss it because there's so much going through here. You know, both of you kept going back to your power team, right? And, you know, frankly, Austin, you're hard on your realtors, but you should be, right? They're so important in your real estate transaction and you pay them all the same. Why wouldn't you go for the absolute best, right? Go vet a whole bunch and go for the best. Don't use your uncle or whoever just because you happen to know them, because they probably know very little to nothing about real estate investing and helping you along that journey, right? You started with some lady who knew nothing about real estate investing. Now, it turned out not bad, but it could have gone completely the other way, right? So expect the absolute best from your team. Don't settle for less than the best. It is essentially your staff, right? So I want to call that out. The other thing was investing against your goals. I think was really interesting. You both came from, you know, kind of like Austin, you really wanted to have a cash flow goal. You didn't have a goal at first, actually, and then you started to develop one, but then you created your investing plan around your goals. I think that's the biggest mistake that new investors make, is they don't start with an end in mind. If you don't have an end in mind, how are you even supposed to figure out what the right thing to invest in is? Because what works for you as a best investment, it can be completely different from what works for somebody else as a best investment. It has to match to your goals. So I think that was really, you know, really key point that you guys pulled out. Network was another one. You guys are business partners as a result of going to a networking event. Now, it was your own networking event, but you met and you became business partners that way. Me and Matt, same thing. We met at a networking event, right? We became friends and we are business partners as a result. Like, it's kind of crazy to think that you meet some random stranger and you can actually like grow an amazing business together with that person. But you end up at that networking event because you guys already have similar interests and similar goals. So you're meeting a whole bunch of people who are already trying to do the same thing. That network is so powerful. So, you know, I'll plug you guys, Rise, you know, fantastic network. You guys have done amazing, big presence on Facebook. We have our own network here too at Volition. We have these monthly meetups. People come learn about this stuff. But yeah, that network is so important. And one thing I wanted to ask you, we've got a whole bunch of questions lined up, but I wanted to ask you, because we've got, you know, bunch of cynical Torontonians. Like Matt's laughing. Our typical, you know, I know our audience, and half of them are like, what's the downside to this? So I'll ask you, like, I know you guys are really real when it comes to like this investing journey for yourselves, sorry. And it hasn't been all roses. What's the crap? Like, what was the tough part? And like, how did you get through that? Because I think that's really important for people to know that this is not an easy journey, right? It's not without its hustle.
Yeah, I think Mayu and my answer is going to be similar. I think I would say tenant is probably the most toughest one, but generally with tenant, it's only on acquisition. Like and most of the deals that me and Mayu buy multifamily, we assume tenants, and the assumed tenants can be a nightmare to deal with. I know a lot of people might say tenant quality in Windsor and Sudbury or like wherever New Brunswick are lacking, but keep in mind everything's area focused. It's terrible to say everyone in Sudbury is a bad tenant. That's not the case, right? Like, no, there are good and bad neighborhoods.
People in Sudbury, right?
Yeah, right? There are always going to be good people working in good jobs in any city you go to. That just has to be built in your business plan. That's why you have to have the market expertise. I would say tenant quality, when I assume tenants, man, like some of them just don't pay rent. Some of them trash the place when they get an N11 sign. Some of them don't leave after signing an N11. And then we have to get sheriffs involved. That's the reality of it, right? But you pay for upside. Like there's a coin phrase, problems or profits, and that's really what the trade-off. Like, we're taking all of these issues that most people won't take, but we're monetizing it out of it, right? Which is why we get these things cheap.
It's part of your business. Like, I love how you said it's part of your business plan, because that's really the key. Like, if you have set this up not just as an investment, but as a business, you're identifying your risk. You've got tenant risk. So you know it's going to be part of it. Maybe you're putting legal funds aside, whatever it is. You're mitigating that risk through expertise, area expertise. And if that risk comes to fruition, because risk is risk, then you've got a mitigation plan. So that's awesome.
Exactly. Me and Mayu actually haven't taken a penny from our cash flow yet. All of it's been in slush funds, just in case.
That's awesome. So how about yourself, Mayu? What do you think is the dark side?
Like, what's the shit is that, like, this entire thing is not as easy as anyone makes it seem on social media, right? So like, I'll get DMs saying, hey, like, can I invest in like this area? I'm like, yeah, you can invest anywhere, man. You can invest in the US, you can invest in freaking Brazil. Like, you can invest literally anywhere. It's just how hard are you willing to work to do that, right? Like, even if you're investing in Toronto, it's not easy either, right? If you want something that's fully hands off, fully like the most passive style, and even that you got the best deals, you shouldn't be passive, right? Is go to a pre-con, right? Don't, if you want the cash flow, you want the returns, and you want the exponential growth, right? Do the work that's involved in it, right? And so I think, what's the downside to it is, I'd say for the last like 2 years, health went to shit. Family time went to shit. Like, luckily it was COVID, so there was no like social events, right? But we just put our head down and grind, right? And even today, it's just put your head down and grind. And I think not enough of that is really just communicated out there, right? It's a hard work.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because, like you said, social media paints this picture like, hey, this is awesome. But there's only so much you can share on social media too, right? Like, if a tenant is giving you a hard time not paying your rent, you can't go post that on social media, right? Especially if you've got a decent following. So like, a lot of times the bad stuff you can't even talk about publicly if it gets into courts or the LTV or whatever. That can't go up on social media. So I hear you. There's a hard hustle and grind behind this.
Yeah, Mayo, I find that a very insightful comment. And it's funny because it actually dovetails with some of the philosophies and teachings of Volition too. We always say it's not only about ROI. You need to also consider risk-adjusted ROI and headache-adjusted ROI, right? And that's basically what you just talked about: headache-adjused ROI and risk-adjusted ROI. So that's a very insightful comment. So thanks for pointing that out. What are we doing now, Ming?
Let's take a couple of questions. I know we're coming up to time, but a whole bunch of questions came through. Shelby's got a couple lined up, and what I'd suggest is, Mayu and Austin, if you guys are cool, the questions we can't get to today, what I'd like to tell our audience is that, either ourselves or yourselves, we'll answer those questions on Instagram. So, give us a follow. And we'll try to get to all the questions at another time. But tonight we'll take like a 3 or 4 right now that Shelby has lined up.
How about this? So Shelby, can you share our Instagram, or is it on our Instagram where we're gonna answer some questions?
We can both answer them. Right? There won't be any wrong answers.
Follow the Volition and follow us. Follow these guys.
Rise guys.
I think we have a couple of slides. So why don't we do the finishing up, and then way we can take some questions, and then that way we can wrap this up with a nice neat bow before 9 p.m. and then these guys are cool.
Flip over to the slides then, Matt.
Yeah,
I'll walk through the last 2 slides.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If these guys are cool staying a few minutes later, that way people can roll off, or they can stick around for the Q&A. Cool? Does that make sense?
Cool. So we've talked a whole ton tonight about stuff. Matt's on the wrong slide, but that's cool.
No, I actually wanted to talk about this slide. Another thing that Austin and Mayu were talking about, and I actually love this. Mayu worked with Austin to accelerate his own knowledge. He worked with someone because he kept on referring to this concept of, I want to accelerate my learning, I want to accelerate my growth, and I wanted to leverage other people because they've already done it, right? They already have the power team, they already know where to invest, they know the good neighborhoods, the bad neighborhoods, they know the tenant profile, they know everything. So let's leverage them. That's what this eraser is. that's what we aspire to do actually here at Volition too. So very, very similar philosophies. So I did want to call that out as well. So thanks Mayu. That was I actually loved your presentation. It's funny, personally, I've had people approach me with wanting to write checks to me as capital partners for 7 figures. And so me being kind of an experienced joint venture guy or whatever, I still learned a bunch of shit from your presentation. So like you're always in learning mode, and you guys actually had a fantastic presentation. You're both very accomplished and very great speakers. So anyway, just to let you know, I'm very, very impressed with you two gentlemen. But yes, on to Ming.
So yeah, what do you do next? As I mentioned, we offer advisory. So we have a free consultation where we sit down, talk about your investing goals and how to get to the next step and what I would do if I was in your shoes. So, you know, the link that Shelby just dropped in the chat. She's so amazing. She just dropped the link in the chat. Feel free to fill out that form and we'll be in touch with you on how to best plan your real estate investing journey. And we usually charge like $250 to $500 an hour for this, but this is free, so take advantage of it. So next slide, please. We are meeting in person. Oh my goodness. We all have our vaccines and we will be properly distanced, but we can finally meet again. So we are having an in-person meeting next month, Wednesday, August 18th. You know, we will, if the weather's terrible, we'll send out a blast, but you know, as long as it's not too bad, we will definitely be there. We will be at Withrow Park, right downtown. And yeah, we will be talking about real estate, and we're doing an AMA. Come pick our brains. Like I said, we charge for our coaching, we charge for our time. This is an opportunity to ask us anything about real estate investing, get your questions answered, and build a network. Like finally, we can meet people in person again. So build a network of other real estate investors, because there's plenty of other crazy people out there who are doing this.
Bring your picnic blankets, bring your beer, bring your wine, bring it in water bottles so that it doesn't look but
let's just say that after the recording stops.
No, we're super excited. I'm really sick of presenting to a sea of black screens, so I'm interested to see if people still actually exist in 3D or not.
Yep, absolutely. And we always end with this slide. Who can do it? You can do it. Let's flip over to questions now and start getting some of that stuff answered.
Good stuff. So Shelby, was there anything else? Did you say that you had another poll or something?
Yeah, we do have another poll. Thanks.
All right, let's do that first.
Throw it up, and then we'll get some questions going here. Okay, I'm going to just copy and paste questions into the chat, and then whoever feels comfortable taking it, Mayu or Austin, Ming or Matt, you guys can jump right in. So I'll let the poll go for a sec.
I just voted. Do I get a sticker? All right. So as people are voting, why don't we kick?
Throw out the first question. We'll go.
Yeah.
Okay. So first question: where do you guys look for when you need to put tenants in a unit? Do you give it to the property management company?
Go ahead, guys. I'll let you guys.
Yeah, long answer short. Yes, we do. We make sure we invest in areas that we already know what the tenant quality is going to be. Just like I believe Chris had that little slide that says different locations, different criteria, kind of what me and Mayu have, just like a mental one. And yeah, the property management company brings forward the lease, or like not lease, sorry, the applications, and me and Mayu have final say. So they do all of the vetting, but before they put someone in there, they say, Mayu, Austin, like, here's the person, here's their info, like, what are your thoughts? And we can either ask follow-up questions, accept them, or decline them.
And the one thing I'll add to that is that very rarely do I go for top dollar rent. I'd much rather be $50 or $100 less in rent and get a decent tenant, right?
Yeah.
So you can't have everything. You really can't have, like, why would a top quality tenant pay top market dollar rent for an average product, right? So.
Yeah, that's a absolutely fantastic point. $50 more a month doesn't make your life any better than it currently is, right? And it won't make a damn difference on your return. But a good tenant will absolutely make a huge difference on the quality of your life. Cool, next question.
All right, this one was specified for Mayu. As a capital partner, what percentage of the deal would you give to the investor?
Honestly, money is so cheap today, right? So just hope that you get 50-50 on a good deal, right? As a capital partner. There are different times in the economic cycle where money is worth a lot more, right? Money People deal that Austin had, and mine's right beside me as well, argues that money is really only 33% of the deal, right? So go for the 50-50 structure, focus on terms other than percentage ownership, right? So me and Austin, the first couple of deals that we did, Austin didn't have the money to put up 100K for the renos and the down payment or whatever. But I said, Austin, whatever we end up at net investment after we refinance this, let's call it a 15 grand net investment, let's call it a 10 grand net investment, whatever it is, I need our interest to be aligned, right? So I said, whatever that number is, we split it down the middle, half, right? So focus on terms, focus on cash. There's other things other than equity ownership that could just make sure your interests are aligned a lot better.
That's a fantastic answer. Do you mind if I just add something on top of that?
Yeah.
So one of the things that typically, people always talk about the 50-50 JV, but it's really whatever is important to you, and it's really whatever you negotiate. But just to put a framework around it, because people have to think in frameworks, they have to think in models, and the model we like to use is the 4 M's. There's money. There's 4 components to doing a deal. There's the 4 M's: money, mortgage, mastery, and management, right? So look at what money is. Money is the down payment. It's one of the 4 components you need. And yes, and Matt. Thanks, Edward. The 5 M's. I'm going to use that from now on. Thanks. Anyway, back on track. So money,
as somebody with a name that starts with M, I'm a little offended, but whatever.
Actually, the other funny thing is, I think I saw another Matthew Lee in here. It's like, oh my God, how common of a name.
You're freaking everywhere.
I know. So anyway, back, money, mortgage. So money is just one component. Money and, okay, do they bring mortgage qualification? And that's kind of where maybe that's now 50-50. Mastery and management. Mastery is knowing what the hell you're doing. Management is not property management. Now let's get that out of our heads, right? There's a difference between property management and asset management. Being an asset manager is very, very different than being a property manager. Property manager dealing with, a leaky toilet. Asset management, what am I going to do with my portfolio? How am I going to optimize my portfolio? How am I going to take this to the next level? How am I going to optimize my returns? Those types of questions, right? So as you become more and more experienced, you start realizing money is not worth anything. This is like, I place so little emphasis on money. Money is not worth a hell of a lot to me, right? It's really around mastery and asset management. That is where the real value is. And when you start understanding that, you'll stop chasing money and you'll start attracting, right? So it's when you reach that point where you start realizing the value that you can bring if you are truly an expert, that there's more money chasing good deals than there are,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
There's more money than there are deals. Always.
Yeah, there's more money chasing deals than there are deals chasing money, right? Yeah. So if you truly believe in that and you believe in the abundance of what's out there, then it makes it much easier to attract that capital. So anyway, that's just kind of layer on the the 4 M's on top of what Mayu said. The 5 M's. Sorry.
Next question.
Next question, do you use smart locks on your properties or another mechanism?
I don't think myself and Austin even see.
No, we just use traditional. We'll use lock boxes.
Our property managers pick up the key from a lawyer, and they definitely aren't putting in smart locks. So nothing's too bad.
I think it's interesting. Like, some people may look at this question and be like, why ask this? But it's interesting that you don't use this, but in the Toronto market, especially in the multifamily Toronto market, we have I would say a high-end client, and they kind of expect this stuff. Expect like smart thermostats, smart locks. They're expecting, high-end stuff. So it depends on your target client, right? I'd say
Yeah.
like make sure you know who your client is, right?
And that's why I think like finishes between different markets are completely different, right? Like
Absolutely.
I put in LVP, sure, and like Windsor, Sudbury, like whatever. New Brunswick, I don't even put that in. I just paint the floor, right? So it's completely different on every single market, right? And the strategies that you go with, especially when you start doing flips and stuff like that, like everything, like it's completely different.
The one thing that we do put in, and a lot of our investors put in, are not necessarily smart locks. It could be, but smart locks also need internet, and it makes it a little bit more difficult. We often use electronic locks, so dumb locks, but electronic.
Keypad.
What's that?
Keypad.
Keypad, exactly. So the one we use is a Slage BE.
Matt will send you the Amazon affiliate link.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm gonna make money off of this. No, but basically, like they're normally $150 on sale. You can get them for about $89. I think for Volition, when we're trying to provide value and help with the leasing process, we actually often put them in, and we make it mandatory for our leasing our landlords. We make it mandatory because it makes it much easier for the entire leasing process, property management process. And it adds value for our tenants as well. They don't have to carry keys. And then we stick all the keys in the lockbox leave it on site as a backup. So it's not quite a smart lock, but I did want to share what our Volition investors do in Toronto.
Yeah, I'm going to copy that. That's a great idea.
Cool.
We actually buy them in bulk when they're on sale.
Yeah, well, I'll send you a note on WhatsApp next time it's on sale, guys. Any other questions for us, Shelby?
Yeah, this one came up a couple times. Maybe a good way to wrap up the evening. What are
let's go around the four of us, each of us giving our best recommendation on a book or podcast or some sort of educational stuff. I will start with you, Austin.
Okay, best book. If it's a real estate book, I'd say the book on investing in rental properties by Brandon Turner, Vice President of Bigger Pockets. To me, that's the Bible of real estate investing if you're getting started off. It covers everything from cash on cash return, what the BRRRR is, all of the basics, plus a bit more. Just skip the tax section because it's not relevant in Canada. And in terms of podcast recommendation, outside Rise Real Estate Investing Podcast, I'd say probably Mayu, that better be your answer too. But outside of that, I'd say the Andrew Hines podcast. That was probably the first podcast I was really committed to and listening, and he has fantastic guests on there as well. A lot of value.
So on my screen, Matt, you're next.
For me, it's less about real estate specific. For me, it's more about mindset. And so that's why I would point to the granddaddy of personal leadership and personal development, and that would be Think and Grow Rich. So for me, Think and Grow Rich was truly a mind-altering experience reading that book. It really changed my mindset, talking about abundance and talking about it's. I think you can learn the real estate. I think real estate, reading real estate books and joining these meetups and stuff like that and networking is important. But it has to build off of. For me, it has to build off of a foundation, and that foundation is mindset. And that mindset, for me, came from Think and Grow Rich. It literally was the first personal development leadership book written on the subject. It created the whole genre. It was written during the Great Depression, 1929. Shit had really hit the fan for a lot of people, and it kicked off this entire genre that has become such a big, a big section in chapters now, right, in bookstores and everything else. But I would start there. And then from there, once you've developed the mindset and you understand about how to create value and the value of a mastermind and building networks, once you start there, then you can start. For me, then you can start branching out into real estate specific stuff.
Cool, Mayu, sir.
Yeah, I'd go I'd definitely go. What is it? 12 weeks in a year. It's more of a business book and more kind of about mindset and setting goals and identifying kind of lead indicators that kind of just compresses time, right? Like we all set annual goals every single year, but like who the heck remembers? And then it's January, so you have 12 months to finish your goals, and then in September you still have 4 months, and then you just never get it done because it's too late, right? 12 weeks in a year just basically sets quarterly goals and talks about setting lead indicators and measuring them on a weekly basis. So that's my book recommendation. Podcast recommendation, Business Wars. Super engaging, very entertaining, a lot of history oriented stuff, which I really enjoy. And it shows you kind of the peaks and troughs of like various companies, right? It'd be like McDonald's versus Burger King. Just like super simple, like a lot of history behind them and a lot to learn and apply to your own businesses. So definitely check out Business Wars. I really enjoyed that podcast.
Cool. For me, I'll give two book recommendations. On the mindset part, for me, what started this entire journey was Rich Dad Poor Dad. Saw Robert Kiyosaki on Oprah, thought it was interesting, bought his book. It's the only book to date that I could not put down. And I was really lucky to read that early on to get that shift from a consumer mindset to an investor mindset and a business owner mindset. The other one is actually something that Austin recommended to me, and that's Traction. It is not a light read. It's great as you grow your real estate, investing from being just there you go. We should be getting like some sort of kickback for this plug, but it's a great book if you are running a real estate business, right? One or two properties, frankly, you don't need what's in here. But if your intentions are to get to a large scale portfolio or create a business out of real estate or any business, actually, it's a fantastic book. Podcast, of course, the Rise podcast, of which I've been honored to be a speaker on there. And then the other one, my friend Erwin Cito, also known as Mr. Hamilton, he has the truth about real estate investing in Canada. It's a very long name. I've also been able to speak on there, and it's one of the long running kind of Canadian investing podcasts. So you can give that a listen to. Awesome. I think that's everything. If we got your email, you'll get a notification about when the presentation drops on our website. We'll get the slides on there as well. I think all the contact information has been dropped in the chat a couple of times. Please give us a follow. Please give Maya and Austin a follow. And that's it. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. It was super informative. Definitely one of the best presentations we've had, and really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Matt. Thanks so much, Ming. It was super fun. And guys, we will try our best to answer your questions. I know we couldn't get to all of them. Just try to DM Mayu and I, and when we have some time, we'll leave you a voice note there.
Yeah, we'll send them over to you guys. So we'll have a copy of them. So
cool. All right, guys.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good evening. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Ming, a whole bunch of people actually stuck around to the end.
and a whole bunch of people still sticking around listening to you and I
to me. Yeah.
prattle on. That was great. I really think that we need to do more that is, I won't call it 101 stuff, but maybe not so advanced. Oh, you can, there's no secret here.